Hey, everybody. I'm Daniel,
Hello. I'm Shalee.
and welcome to our first attempt at a wild, new, fun thing, which is talking about movies, which is the thing we do all the time, talk about movies and TV, usually in the comfort of our living room or in the car. And we've just got a lot of things to say about Spider-Verse, and we've been reading a lot of stuff online, and um, just going to add to the mix a little bit, and I think kind of get into the like real artsy parts of the conversation, the stuff that like makes us really excited. So, um, so do you want to just kind
Well,
of introduce yourself a little bit in terms of like the art you do and why you care about art in general?
yeah, absolutely. So I am a theater director, and I was just thinking about this today. It's like how to nail like my aesthetic or the type of stories that I gravitate to. And I think what I landed on is that I love like strong narratives, like good narrative structure told with like inventive multimedia
Mm.
form. And that like when you like play with form and medium and genre, like but you're still telling a great story that an audience can follow, like that's kind of my jam. So I would say that, and I'll just mention this since it comes up, like a lot of the theater that I do has like traditional scene work, but there are also moments where narrative is interrupted like by projections. There are some scenes that are conducted via dance. I love what I refer to as like impossible stage directions. And I often like to solve my impossible stage directions through like dance and movement. So, like, if you're not a big theater nerd, stage directions are the text that exists in the script, but is not said out loud. So, stage directions that I've done before are things like characters are consumed in an ocean of blood, or characters are communing with God, or, and I mean like a God, and not like a Christian centric God. Or what's the one that I always talk about? Um, yeah, that's or like the stage turns upside down for
Ooh,
a moment, like the world turns upside down for a moment. So that's like a little bit about what I do artistically and like my interest aesthetically, I would say.
yeah, that's a good, I think, opening too, because neither of us are like filmmakers. That is not our
Correct.
preferred, not preferred art form. I'm sure we would love to if in another lifetime. Um, but I think there's just so much crossover in all these different mediums. So, um, myself, I am a writer. My big focus is on comics. I love comics and comic aesthetics and just the ways in which that medium is always pushing boundaries. And so it's kind of no surprise that I loved the first Spider-Verse movie because it did so many things that I felt were very comic-y. And it's been really fun to see how like that push in animation has kind of grown from there. So the things that I think stand out to me are one, how are you pushing your art form to tell things visually, and then from just kind of a straight writing or like plot standpoint, I'm really focused on, or I should say, the stories I love most are ones that have really, really strong and solid themes, and we'll get into more of that later as to like what I mean by that. So this is a film that to me kind of hits on all cylinders and digs in those spaces, and then I'll say too that like um, I'm gonna sound all fancy, but really I just watched some YouTube video on this last week about meta modern film and this idea of like modernity and contemporary and all those sort of things, and just this idea of art stories that comment on themselves within themselves. So like what does this movie say about all movies, and what does this story say about all comic stories? And so again, this film has just kind of been all consuming for the last few days. So hi
Yeah,
Stephanie, welcome. Thank you for hopping in. Um,
welcome. This
please be
oh sorry,
I
you
just
speak to people. Sorry.
I just say please just feel welcome to throw in your thoughts as you have them, or anything that you feel like we miss, or just um I to me like even for like movies or things I don't like, I love hearing why people love them. And so I'm always just curious about like what resonates with folks, and then maybe kind of digging and chewing into like why that is. But that said, if you like, no pressure either. We wrote way too many notes on a Google sheet yesterday that we'll try to get through. And who knows how long the stream will go. But hopefully we'll be able to chop it up into something a little bit more palpable later on. So
Palatable.
I've always said that wrong. So
Oh,
thank you.
sorry. That's
No,
okay.
don't apologize. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop right on to what you were saying about like meta modern critique. This, I just to say that I feel like this text, and I feel like that's such like a snotty way to talk about things, but when I say this text, I'm referring to the movie. I feel like this film is like the perfect example of what like that term might mean, where you're commenting on the work as you're doing it,
Yeah.
which we might chat about in a second because I think the movie straight up tells you that. So
Yeah, it opens with that.
yeah.
Well, let's jump into our notes
Oh,
proper. Oh,
sorry. I actually I wanted to bring something up before we go into
yeah.
our notes proper. Because we talked a little bit about our aesthetic interests. I'll also just say too that you and I are like huge animation fans, so like we're kind of perfectly primed to love this movie. Um, and did you mention that you write specifically for children and young adults? Because I feel like that's important
No,
context
yeah,
too.
that's my focus. I've got a master's degree in writing for kids and young adults, and so understanding the ways in which stories for like middle grade like readers or audiences or young adult audiences and how those differ is I think really fun to poke at. And I think this movie does some really cool things too in that like um Into the Spider-Verse is kind of more of a middle grade, close to that YA sort of feel. It's a movie, so they aren't as strong genres. This one, Miles, a little bit older. We're able to go a little bit into some maybe not darker, but more like complex themes. And I think one thing this movie does that's super cool is how like adult parent focused it is. I'm struggling to think of an animated film that bounces between the two different lenses, like what the experience of a kid and the experience of an adult or the experience of a parent. And gives I think a lot of respect to both of those sides without feeling like really preachy to either one.
Yeah, it's a very special movie in that way, I think, because I think movies about children's reaction to parenting have become very prominent, especially in the children's
Mm,
space, which is just so exciting.
mhm.
You have movies like Turning Red and Encanto, but those are really from like a child's
Yeah.
perspective. So this movie is special in that it does both.
Mm.
Okay, and one last thing before we jump into notes proper is and we didn't mention this last night, but I really think we should, which is like I kind of want to just briefly talk about our experiences with the first movie.
Sure.
Because that feels really important contextually because like we're now the movie opened what 3 days ago and we on
Hmm.
Thursday
Hmm.
and we've seen it every day since then, except for we have not seen it today. We decided to do this instead. So we've seen it 3 times, but we prepped ourselves to see it 3 times because of how dearly we loved the
Yeah.
first movie.
Yeah. We set a lot of time aside to watch this. Took time off work to get those early showings. Yeah, because I think we were excited for the first one. I remember the trailers, and as someone who like has a love hate relationship with trailers, I remember watching those and like pausing them because I was just so excited about what it was doing visually, um, and going in and seeing it, and just like from the opening shots, like the even just how they do the producers or the production company like stuff, I was like floored. And so I think we watched it somewhere around like 15 times in theaters over the few months it was out because we were just like this is insane. I want to keep seeing this on a giant screen. And then I've watched it another dozen or so times, I mean a few times every year. But surprisingly like not within the last few months. So it's kind of been fun to give it a little bit of space, and then I think we'll be good to go back and rewatch and see what other things we pick up on. um, yeah.
Yeah, I remember we've seen that movie excuse me, probably like hundreds of times now. And I still remember that extremely giddy feeling of seeing it for the
Hmm.
first time. I remember it was like late night. We went to this theater. I remember not knowing very much about the movie at all, but knowing that you were like out of your mind excited for it.
Yeah.
We like sat in the seats and then it starts going. And what's great about this second movie continues it, but exactly what you were saying is like we are used to seeing those images or the logos of the production companies, but Into the Spider-Verse gives you a bunch of alternate possibilities of what those logos could be. Like immediately from the very start of the movie, playing with form, right?
Hmm.
And like subverting our expectations of how a movie even
Yeah.
starts before the movie even starts. And and I just remember like tearing up immediately. Like I just remembered like this full giddy feeling in my art because it just or in my heart in my art because it's something I'd never seen
Yeah.
done in a movie before, and it was so particular to this type of movie.
Hmm.
And then I think when you get that like bah with like the approved by the Comics Code Authority, and then I watched like you have that moment of recognition, and then the music just like booms right away. I was just like, I had no idea what I was in for, but I was like 100% game. And so when this movie was coming out, I was just like, yeah, we're we're there. There's like no
There's
questions
no way around.
asked.
Yeah, I mean, we watched it, 3 days in a row. I'm trying to remember the first time like we saw it. Did we go and buy tickets to this the day after? I don't know. I feel like we maybe waited a few days. Like we have to go back. Um, but we saw it the day after, and it's so much to gain on the second viewings. But it is really hard to top that first one, and that's sort of like what's next. And so like there's a part of me that's like, we get the third one next year, and it's like you hope there's going to be more, right? Like but there's also the sense that it kind of needs to put a pretty big like period at the end of that film.
Yeah,
We're going to get a spin-off with Gwen perhaps and other people, and there might be some other things that come of it later. um but there's sort of a feeling of like we get one more of those like first viewings, and that's kind of like a bittersweet sort of thing that I'm like, great. I like want to be able to savor that, because this is definitely one of those things to you want to be able to forget and watch again.
yeah,
um so I'm going to ask you, thinking about the new movie,
yes.
uh what kind of stood out to you under that first viewing? What is like if you had to pick one thing or a few things that we know
Uh,
we're not going to talk about later in our other conversation.
I love that you say a few things because you're like looking at our just like hastily, like in a frenzied panic outline that we
Yeah.
like spent a full hour on last night because
Yeah.
we were so excited that I've listed like a few things. But for me, the big thing that stood out is the art style, and I should say like art styles of this movie. I think you can really see how Into the Spider Verse was like a testing ground. Like they
Mhm.
pushed form so much in that movie, and I think when they got such a big and positive reaction, like this movie is like they've like really pushed it
Yeah.
here. I think I'm not going to go deep into Gwen because we have a whole bunch of things to talk about in regard to like her art style and her universe. But I just like want to shout out that I think there's like a seamless like mashup of like animation and live action in this movie, which I
Mm.
feel like was a huge question,
Yeah.
the sort of first film left on the table. Um, you almost get it like as soon as you get into Miles's point of view in the story, which is really cool. And then you have it in Gwen's first fight. She has a fight with the Renaissance vulture. He's like from a what is it, Leonardo da Vinci esque like
Universe. Yeah.
yeah, but this like painting, the Vitruvian, is it Vitruvian man?
Vitruvian Man.
The Vitruvian man, yes. And it's so freaking good. It's like he's written like parchment in her like really
Mhm.
beautifully colorful world. He has figure drawings for all of his weapons. There's a moment where his wings get broken and he is like in his mind like repairing them, and you see like the sketchy like thought process of
Mhm.
all around him as his wing is like being repaired, which is incredible. And then like to see that, and then also later in the movie, see like Spider Punk's like completely different aesthetics
Mhm.
too. Hobie, it feels very collage and cut out and like black and white and neon colors. Um, yeah, so for me, just like the art style was like So incredible and breathtaking. How about for you? What stood out for you in your first viewing of this?
I'll get to that in a second. I think one thing too that I'm mentioning both. I saw someone call him Da Vulture as in Da Vinci, but Da Vulture, which I think is very funny.
Amazing.
Both him and Hobie as these characters that are like 2D flat in a 3D, like they kind of balance between in these two ways that are
Yes.
like I can't tell fully what they're doing. And I know the first movie teases that a little bit with like Spider Ham and like Penny a little bit are supposed to look a little flatter, but
Yeah.
are still trying to find that balance of how do you make the flat work in this space. And then I mean I can't wait for like the documentaries and the YouTube clips and everything that will come out in the next few weeks as they kind of break down the cheats they do, because this one definitely has more straight 2D elements than the last one. But I think we'll be surprised to see how many things were done in 3D
Yeah.
and like and just were lit to perfection, or we're just running through whatever engines and tools to really make that magic work. Because I think the thing that like the one thing that gets me excited every single time seeing the vulture is his little chain attack and how it is like a piece of paper, a flat piece of paper, which the chain is drawn on, because you can't
Yeah.
show just that. So like that just is such a cool thing that again, it's just they're exploring, they're pushing the boundaries and saying like, why can't we do this? And they just it. I'm excited for the third because I know they're just going to go further. Like they're going to have to.
Yeah.
They're going to choose to elevate, and it's
I
going
got
to be wild.
gotta
Um,
elevate.
yeah, elevate, incredible. So my thing is like the like I was already vibing with it, but I think that the piece of the movie where I kind of is like not like hit with a brick, but it's like oh, like we're going there. Like what like it's sort of like a promise that the writers are giving you, is when and also it says in the headlines for this video, and we'll try to do it every time we edit this or cut this somewhere else. Lots of spoilers.
So many
Please,
spoilers.
if
Please leave
you're
if you haven't
watching,
seen it.
don't. Yeah.
Leave
But
right now if you haven't seen it. Seriously, I would never want anybody to go into this movie
yeah,
knowing things.
you only get one viewing without knowing. So
Yep.
like you can go back and watch it again after you hear what the hell we have to say, and then
You're
hopefully
not cool if you know things before you see it. It's just you're robbing yourself of an experience. So please see it first.
insulting the viewers. That's the perfect strategy. Um,
It's true.
it's the line like that the Gwen says is in every other universe Gwen falls for Spider-Man, and in every universe it doesn't end well. And it's just like that decision to name that in the film, to name that Gwen dies, like Gwen's role in Spider-Man lore is to die, and to say that like you know because it's whereas you know when we see um our first Spider-Man trilogy, we have Mary Jane in it, film-wise. Their second Spider-Man trilogy, we have Gwen Stacy, and we're all like, "Oh shit! Oh, Gwen's here!" And like, she makes it to the first movie, and we're like, the second movie, there's like a few teasers, and we're like, "Yep, this is it. This is the one where Gwen dies." And we're just kind of like, we're okay. We're not okay with it, but we just are expecting it in a way where like we aren't expecting to be challenged. I think the sequence is both like well done and campy. It's kind of a wild sort of thing. There's the spider web hand, which is both like it's kind of cheesy, but it's kind of like here, like this is fate. We know what this is. We know it's about to happen.
Well, and
Um,
he's reaching out to her. Like,
he's
yeah,
reaching out
I
to her.
it is super cheesy, but I love it as
It
from like a
works,
symbolism
right? Like it's
perspective.
if
Yeah.
you know this is how like this is the story of the comics and this is how we're choosing to do it.
And
And
we're talking about the Andrew Garfield movie
Andrew
right
Garfield,
now. Yep.
yeah, and then in No Way Home, we get a like a subversion of that with Andrew Garfield and MJ in that movie in a way that is like I think so many people felt like that wave of just emotion because it's like, oh, he gets to save her, like he gets to break that a little bit in a way that just is like super cool, um, but still in full recognition of this thing. But it's not said to the camera like, hey, MJ's gonna die later, and then Andrew Garfield says it's just like we're happy to have that subverted. I was joking here.
This moment of him learning from the canon, which is like a huge like central
Mhm,
tension of this movie that we'll get
yeah,
into. But that's why Andrew Garfield in No Way Home catching MJ the way he does differently than he catches Gwen
yes,
Stacy in his movie. Like we have that catharsis because he's learned and he'll never let that happen again, you know?
yeah, and he gets to act through it in a way that I think is really cool.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
like he gets to have that moment in a way that's almost like a joke, almost like it's a nod to the audience. It's a thing that kind of brings us into it. But it still is like the present space of like if we get a Gwen Stacy in the MCU, we all kind of have our expectations, right? Like we all kind of see where that's going. So when the movie says this outright, it kind of like it challenges the thought of like, hey, we are addressing that this is a thing in this universe, and we are addressing this is something that Gwen is aware of. She has now like gone to the Spider Society, has learned about the canon, has talked to how many other Peters who've been like, oh, like I was telling Shalee, like how what is her interaction with everyone there if it's not like, oh, hey, you're Gwen, and they all kind of probably like have really weird feelings looking at her because they've all lost a Gwen. Um, and so for her to kind of outright say that and put up this wall between her and Miles, it's just this like it's this challenge of the writer saying like we're gonna have to talk about this. We're either gonna have to kill Gwen and this kind of sets forth this idea that this is what fate and determinism is, or we're gonna like challenge this idea. And so by laying that out and probably 30, 40 minutes into the movie, um, it's preparing for a lot of the bigger discussions happening later. But it's just bringing that up and you have to address it. It can't just be a little joke or a comment she makes that like we have in the back of our heads and then just isn't mentioned. It was clear then that like this is something the movie's going to play with, and that was kind of my big like, ooh. And I think similarly the other thing that has stuck with me after that first viewing that was like, especially in the terms of like trust for like, hey, what comes next? How are they going to end this thing? Are they going to be able to land all these threads? Is their willingness to challenge the thesis of the first movie, which is like anyone can wear the mask. I think there's a few big themes in the first movie, but that I think like that's like the last line, right? It's like anyone, you could wear the mask, anyone could wear the mask, and this movie is kind of being like, is that true? Is Miles allowed to? Like he can, but should he? It's kind of a big thing this movie puts forward, and so to challenge your own themes in that way, to say that they aren't set in stone and that we're going to interrogate that further, I think is super cool. Um,
It really sets in stone that this is the second of a trilogy. Like this really
mhm,
feels like the second of a trilogy. And I think what makes the film remarkable is that it's a pretty incredible like standalone film on its own too. I wouldn't say standalone because I do think you need the first to watch the second, but
mm,
I feel like there are a lot of second movies and trilogies that are like either so doom and gloom or like it feels like a lot of setup. I'm thinking
mm,
about I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan, but I'm thinking about Two Towers in particular, which really feels like a bit of a slog, that
sure.
movie. Whereas like Fellowship is like really beautiful and fun. Um, uh, yes, yeah, exactly what Stephanie is saying in chat. It's like nothing they do in this movie is accidental or
No.
throwaway or like something that isn't going to pay off. Like there, it's really really strong in that way. I'm so sorry. I have to like be a nerd for 5 seconds. I
Please.
really want to go back to what you were saying about this moment where Gwen tells Miles that every universe she falls in love with Spider-Man and it doesn't end well. There's just really beautiful theatrical cinematic blocking in that moment
Mm,
too. Like she says she breaks up those two things. In every other universe, Gwen falls for Spider-Man. He has this like hope. Okay, she's like mentioning a romantic interest and he like moves his hand closer to her
mm,
and then we cut to a close up of her face where she looks down, implying that she knows how he feels. She sees him moving closer to
mhm,
her. And she like swallows a lump in her throat. And then she gives us that
yeah.
punch, right? And in every other universe, it doesn't end well. And he pulls back. Like, it's just like a really beautiful moment of like recognition of each other's feelings. Like, they're really in tune
Mm,
with each other and listening to each other, and also just like really beautiful consent and knowing your space. You know what I mean?
mhm.
It's yeah,
And to
it's such a special moment. I think.
and to still end on her leaning on his shoulder,
Yes.
like there's this want for both of them to
Yeah.
like be closer and be more connected, and she not only has all the secrets she's keeping in this film, but she has that like fear of I like if I fall in love with you I will die.
Yeah.
And believing that to be truth, and being like how do you do that? And I think just talking about blocking, I really love watching that scene. It's such a quiet scene in the film. um in the way that they use 3D space of like they're both land and they walk on this little like they do the little rotation walk, and then they walk to the edge and she's below and he's above, and like choosing when to get them closer, like he's thinking about what she says, and she says, don't tell your parents, and then she walks under, and he's like, well, why not? And there's that physical disconnect, and then he says, well, maybe some things are just for us, and then he drops down on that line, and then he's still sitting a little farther away, and she speaks his emotion, or he makes a joke about his emotional intelligence. She says it's great to talk to you, and he uses that as a cue to get a little closer. Like it
Yeah.
is so many other, I mean, especially like I talk so much about superhero movies because it's coming from a comic space and coming from an American comic space. It's what I read. Um, but staging isn't always a thing that's important outside of like an action sequence,
Yeah.
right? And actually, oftentimes I think like you'll lean on panels and closeness in panels rather than closeness in like your characters. And so when you're in film, when you have more, you have to fill more shots and more like second to second moments. Being able to show that like emotional and physical intimacy through that blocking the scene is incredible.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if I want to have you talk about Kiss or Kill Zone
Yeah.
here. Just no, you're because you know what I'm thinking already.
Are you thinking about the kill moment?
I'm thinking about the kill moment
Yeah.
later.
So do we want to talk about kiss and kill here? Well, maybe we'll set up kiss and kill here
Yeah,
and
some
we'll
kissing
talk
and kill
about
here.
the
Yeah.
kill moment, right? So, because I don't really, you know what? We do get a kiss moment actually between Gwen and Miles. I don't think it's in
Oh,
this scene because they're not
yes.
set up for it,
There,
but we get
yes.
it in a later scene. I don't know where we could talk about it though, or if we should just talk about it here.
I'll say this. We're gosh, we're like 8 bullet points in. So let's do this a little bit quickly. Talk about just the kiss and kill zone, like as a theater directing thing you've told me about, and it's outside of theater as well.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the kiss moment. So you set up what it is. I'll talk about the kiss moment, and we will find a time to come back to it later.
Okay.
So go.
So I will be naming what the kiss moment is, or what I recognize the kiss moment is in
Yeah.
this movie. Great. Okay, cool. So kiss or kill zone. One type of theater professional that I've collaborated with often, who are really, really great collaborators, are fight directors or fight choreographers. And Stephanie's like, do it.
Talk about the kiss or kill zone.
Our fight directors, and I think it was like maybe David Chandler and like Jessica Thines have also both amazing fight directors and fight choreographers have illustrated this concept to me before. But you have your kiss or kill zone, which is when you get so close to somebody, you are either going to kiss them or kill them. Like that is just a level of closeness and intimacy where like those two things are the only option, which is great because they're like major opposite feelings, and you can really play with the dichotomy of that intimacy in either moment that you're looking at. So the moment we're just describing with them upside down looking at the world, I wouldn't describe that as a
Right.
kiss moment because they're not facing each other, right?
Mhm.
They're not in like a good position for a kiss. But we do get a really famous, um, I would argue, like canon
Yes.
kiss, kiss or kill zone
Mhm.
moment in Spider Verse and Across the Spider Verse, which is this movie, which is when Miles is following Gwen. She's investigating the spot in his universe. She just has a conversation with Jess Drew, where Jess insists that she needs to leave Miles's world and never see Miles again. And what Gwen doesn't know is that Miles is there. He's invisible, hanging from the ceiling and watching all this happen. So he watches her look back at his world and consider exactly Stephanie upside down Spidey. She looks back at his world and she's considering the fact that like this is going to be the last time she ever sees him. And you have Miles upside down, right in that kiss or kill zone with her. But she doesn't know he's there. And what I think is really brilliant about that moment is the way that the blocking works, it doesn't put their lips together like it could happen in a
Mhm.
second. Like there is still like an appropriate amount of distance. Like they're really looking at each other, and she says goodbye, Miles. Like it feels like a goodbye moment, and
Mhm.
you see it register for Miles that like this is probably goodbye. But it takes this really iconic Spider-Man visual of Spider-Man upside down, with a love interest, And we've seen like in the Tobey Maguire, they kiss. Andrew Garfield, he kisses Gwen Stacy like this, yeah.
They
Or no,
do
I think
some.
Toby kisses Gwen Stacy in a movie like this.
Toby's no. Toby kisses Mary Jane in the first one. It's like
Yes.
the kiss from that movie that was like, I think like one MTV's Kiss of the Year
Yeah.
sort of thing. And
But then he in a later movie, like for the public when he's
oh,
being celebrated as
I
Spider-Man, he
forgot that Gwen
kisses
Stacy's
Gwen
even in
Stacy like that
those
too.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Stephanie, but like in this movie, it's like such a heartbreak moment because they're
Hmm.
saying goodbye to each
Hmm.
other. And like she goes through the wormhole portal. She goes through the wormhole and we see him drop down. He's by himself. He becomes visible again. And he makes the decision, no, I'm not going to accept that goodbye. And he jumps into the portal after her.
Yeah. And we'll get
Yeah.
back to the kill moment.
So that's
That's the
kiss.
kiss
That's the
moment.
kiss moment.
I think too that the piece that I think you kind of said, but just to really simplify, is like it's vulnerability. It's that
Yes.
physical space is vulnerability because it's so safe to play a foot away, 2 feet away, and that
Yes.
like when I think watching like theater, like amateur theater, when people are playing either violence or love and they're at that separated space and it's the most intimate they're at, you're like, you gotta be closer, or you
Yeah,
don't
on
have that feeling.
stage, yeah, if you see my Zoom window as like a whole stage, like this is incredibly safe distance. What becomes theatrically dynamic as a director is if you get this, you know what I mean? Like this massive amount of distance between two people, or if you see them extremely close to one
Mhm.
another. Like that's when like you're really feeling
Yeah,
drama.
yeah.
Okay, goodness, we need to move.
We have a notes on just other favorite moments. I honestly think we just rip through these
Rip
and we
through them.
don't
Let's
get to
do
talk
it.
about them.
Yeah, you go
Although
first.
I will say one thing because I was going to respond to Stephanie's thing earlier about nothing in this movie is accidental or throwaway. This is the reason I think we are making this talk, is because we are seeing commentary on this where people are like, wow, this is so cool, or oh, did you see this cool coincidence, or this thing was awesome. And it's just one of those pieces where um as we have broader ways to talk about art online, uh like recognizing that like these aren't coincidences, these aren't like a fun little happenstance, or do you think this is that, like, yeah, absolutely, like lean into or like read into everything, especially in a movie like this that is so purposely saying we are doing this with precision. You can't, I mean, animated films are nothing but precision. Every single frame that is brought to you has had so many people look over it that like you don't do anything without some choice. And so
Uh,
every single thing we talk about here going forward, it's not like, oh, that's a good like coincidence. I think it's one of those things you have to treat like, no, this was done this way.
we are
Uh,
praising every single artist. Like
yes.
we are assuming everything they did is completely on purpose and they're looking for this moment of recognition
Hmm.
in the audience. And I think conversely too, if you look at any moment in this movie and you're like, oh, if you're like CinemaSins reacting, like this feels like a plot hole, um, I would argue that it's not. I would
Challenge it.
argue
Yeah.
that the film does demand that you ask questions about the information you're being given, that it
Hmm.
demands that you consider the source of
Yeah.
information that's been given to you, and to not so blindly accept what you're told.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Things that I know we're probably not going to talk to elsewhere. Some just visuals of it is so cool. When Gwen has the line in the like her opening monologue and her opening sequence, she says, "I used to have a friend." Um, the train is passing by and we see like Miles in the like train windows, which is such a great just connection to both like film and rotary, and that panel's all it's there. But specifically, it is the shot from him in Into the Spider-Verse, the first one, where they're on the bus ride and they're leaving and they're talking about like, will you be my friend? And like he like leans over and he's looking at her, and it's just like that moment where she's like, we'll think about being friends. So being able to use that exact shot, like that is not just like when she is thinking about him, she's thinking about that moment on the bus. That's what connects to there. Um, on that same sort of thing, like uh, just all the transitions that happen from like on the train, off the train, the doors open, she's in prom, like that stuff is just so cool. It's very comic book. It's honestly, I think one thing that like Scott Pilgrim does really well is just like really, really clean transitions. that just let your story move.
It almost feels like reference, like
Hmm,
I almost feel like this almost assumes that you've seen Scott Pilgrim and you're making connections in those
sure.
way. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what was I going to say? I
You
lost
can't
it.
you can't you can't respond to these. We're going
Yeah,
fast.
sorry. Sorry.
What's
Is it my
yours?
turn? Is it my
Yes, your
turn?
turn.
This is a favorite little moment that I don't think we'll get to talk to, but this is obviously like just a comedy moment that killed me. Is you have Miles fight in his second fight with the Spot. He's just come from the a sort of parent teacher conference that and he's fighting the Spot, and we also see Jeff, his dad, trying to get in there as well and help Spider-Man. And all of a sudden, we see him at the top of scaffolding, and he sees a Spot in front of them. He's already gone through it before, and he's contemplating jumping into the Spot. And instead, we have an immediate cut to him running down the stairs, which is an incredible comedy moment, but it's also a fantastic callback to another
Mhm.
extremely funny moment in the first film, where Miles is like, "I need to jump off a building to be Spider-Man," and we watch him pick a building, get scared, run down the stairs, and pick a shorter building. But I think we'll two hand this part, but it really feels like an example of like new Spider Verse canon. Like
Mhm.
we have these stairs, we have other moments too. Like, is that a Banksy? Is a line callback in two different universes, which feels really fun.
Uh,
You
there's
these
yeah
other two are yours, yeah.
the scenes where Captain Stacy arrests Gwen are slightly different from each other, but the second one specifically, which is at the Guggenheim, uh, I'll have to go back and see it, but I'm pretty sure it's almost shot for shot the same as Officer Davis, or actually who goes by Officer Morales, which we haven't talked about yet at all. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, in the first movie, when he goes to arrest Miles as Spider-Man, or like he comes out of the cop car, it's a really like uncommon for the movie moment of almost like handy cam over his shoulder across, and we see the fence, like the camera pans in the same way, we see the same zoom in, the same like shot on your hands up, like it's like one to one, in a way that again is by design. It's not accidental. It is like we are purposely referencing this, um and
You're talking about these two moments being the one where Spider Gwen is like holding her Peter.
uh
Um,
it's that scene, and also when he approaches her in the Guggenheim, it's like both
got
both
it.
they almost kind of follow the same exact flow.
And
um
into the Spider Verse, you're referring to the scene where Uncle Aaron has just gotten shot, and
yes.
Miles brings him to an alley, and his
Hmm.
father discovers them.
Hmm. So again, it's paralleling those stories and then saying not only are these stories the same, these are like playing out the same way, right?
Yeah,
It's not just enough to say like, oh, these two things happen. It's these things are happening in like a parallel that matches this broader idea of what is canon. And by then saying like we are taking our old film that we just made and already considering that canon, and choosing to be so specific. One thing I really like too, I don't know if I shared this with you yet, is um, I've loved this into the Spider Verse. Is there's a family trait between Miles and his uncle and his father, where they like no 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 no, like there's a certain cadence to how they say no that you see um Miles say early at one point. Aaron says it, I think, when he first when Miles takes his mask off, he goes, "Oh no, no!" Like he stutters it out. It's like it's really emotional there. Jeff says it when he finds Aaron. It's the same delivery that just like is such a cool way to put them together. And the first time it's kind of like humorous when it's with Miles, and then like each time after that, it is just like this bond that shows their family in that way.
yeah.
And Gwen delivers it the same way when she's holding Peter. So it's the same, like it's
Mm,
again then bleeds. So like it's not just a family thing, it's also now a Spider-Man thing, and it's tied to these moments of losing someone, that I think is just like, oh, so great.
yeah.
Um, but we gotta move on.
Uh, yeah, let's keep moving.
Keep going.
We have juicy Easter eggs that we noticed. Just like I think we picked one apiece. And
Mhm.
for me, it just like again, I'm just gonna stop here and say
Spoiler warning.
if you have not seen this movie, turn off this video. Turn it off. Don't watch it. Wait until you've seen it and then come back. But I will just say that like I am not a huge comic book person. I have seen all of like the theatrical releases of all the Spider-Man movies except for the Venom movie. And I've seen Spider-Verse, so like for me, that's that's my canon. That's like the storytelling tradition that I'm coming from. So I would say I'm sort of like Easter egg proof. I'm not really noticing those things, but for me, seeing Donald Glover's Prowler is huge, right?
Hmm.
Feels like a promise from the first movie because we see in Aaron's apartment
Mm.
an episode of Community where Donald Glover's character is like waking up in some Spider-Man PJs, and there was like a huge viral campaign to try and get him to play Spider-Man. In the Tom Holland movie, he's
Oh, sorry, keep going, keep going.
in
In the
the
Tom
Tom
Holland movie, yeah.
Holland in the Tom Holland movie, we meet him, but he's introduced to us as Aaron Davis, who we know to be the Prowler. And so then to get to see him in this movie in live action, like in one of Miguel's uh, prison, their cages, I'm
Yeah,
like,
the cage,
one of
yeah.
his cages. Uh, to see him there as the Prowler in the Prowler garb is like cool. I mean, every single theater we've seen it in so far, there's just been like audible reaction of like
Hmm.
just excitement
Hmm.
to see Donald there.
It's such a fun reveal. Um, we're not going to talk about these pieces as much, but yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
And I think we'll actually get to it a little bit. We'll bring him back up.
Okay.
My like big Easter egg. It's I mean this thing is loaded with it, and that's again not necessarily the purpose of these videos because I think enough people are out there and they already have. I saw videos like 300 Easter eggs from this movie that came out like the day after. I was like, y'all found 300 in like a day. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Um, but it's in the first time Spot is monologuing, like he falls into himself, he gets a monologue, he kind of like sees his past as his future, or it could even be right before that. I think when he's talking to Miles, and he's like, "Do you remember? Do you know who I am?" And he explains his backstory about the bagel and being a scientist. When he mentions that he took the spider from another universe, we're in either like a classroom or a lab. I'd have to see it again. But we see Miles from Earth 42 from behind. We get one distinctive thing that they mention three times in the film, or they mention twice, and we see is the braids. And so there's a kid in the back of this room that has braids. Then you're like, oh, cool. So I think
Yeah.
later we'll talk about what that means, but that's the sort of thing that like you bury that is just really really juicy to see for the future. So
Yeah.
all right, those were our fun intros things. We
Yeah.
filled a good cool 40 minutes with.
Yep.
Uh,
We're finally at the bottom of our first page
First
of
page. Oh
notes.
boy. Um, but art style. Let's like talk about art style and what it means, and specifically like around Gwen. So I'm gonna let you kick this off.
Yeah, I'll kind of get started. I mean, first of all, if there's like a thesis for the reason we're doing this whole video, it's probably it's probably like when the first conversation that Gwen has with the vulture, our like Da Vinci vulture, which is they're flying around the Guggenheim, and the vulture like looks around and he was like, "You call this art?" Because she's like, "Can you please stop destroying the art?" And he's like, "You call this art?" And she very cheekily is like, "Well, we're talking about it, aren't we?" Which I I adore. And then she goes on further to say, kind of a meta critique of art, but also art at the same time. Um, and I just think for like two people like us who are like deeply in love with art and like deeply critical of it in like the best ways, like wanting to really celebrate artists' intentions, this quote was made for us. It was made for us, but it's one of the things that I kind of want to frame when we're talking about art style. But specifically, let's talk about, we've talked about the vulture, we've talked about Spider-Punk's various aesthetics, we've seen Miles' aesthetic in the first movie along with Spider Noir and Spider Ham and Penny Parker, but in this we get to spend time in Gwen's world, in her universe. And we really get to see the ways in which her universe has such like a, I don't know if it's watercolor. I'm calling it watercolor. I might be wrong. I just saw something blurry falling in the
Something, yeah, I don't know
background.
what that was when it fell in the distance.
So if it's not watercolor, I'm not like an art historian, so please be gentle with me. But uh, it's like a very painterly aesthetic,
Hmm.
her worlds.
Hmm.
Um, they're much more willing to play with abstraction in her worlds. Like we will see ongoing in a scene. I'm thinking about some of these scenes where she's in conversation with her father, where you will see it kind of you'll see maybe the posters on her room and some of the images in her room. And as they get deeper and deeper into emotional conversation, you will see the images sort of blur into shapes,
Hmm.
and the color becomes very important and begins to define some of the mood of the conversation. But we get that from Jump because the big kicker about this movie is that this is Gwen's movie.
Yeah.
This is really a movie for Gwen, and the way that I'm defining that is that she is the emotional arc that we're following.
Hmm.
She is the one who begins in one place, has those has her sort of place in her understanding challenged and changes by the end of the
Hmm.
movie. And we get to start right away with her playing drums and telling the story of Miles, but she's telling it through her point of view. So all of these iconic images that we see from the first movie are not, like we're going to take the art that we've already done and put it here just to catch the audience up. They have reimagined those moments in her painterly aesthetic, these
Hmm.
images from before. Um, so it's so strong, and it raises like so many interesting questions for me to be like, oh, is that how she saw the first film,
Hmm.
like through her eyes? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And this is her world and her understanding and her aesthetics. That's just like that's super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, what I think people are like, same with the first movie, are just like floored by how beautiful it is, how unique the animation is, um, how cool it is, uh, and whether our voices or not, there's that sense of like it's so individualized to these people. Like, yes, it's their universe, but then it influences the ways in which they, maybe they interact with other people or how we get to know them. It's so much like this POV point of view sort of conversation, which we don't, um, which coming from a book world, talking about prose and poetry, and if you've taken any English course, elementary or high school, you had your teachers talking about first person, second person, third person, and like the how those work and how they operate. And as you kind of keep going, you talk about point of view in terms of like, uh, if you're writing your book, who do you choose to follow, right? You generally you don't want to hop between characters within a single chapter. Maybe you've got two characters in each chapter, they get their point of view, and you go back and forth in that way. Um, but comics and movies get to shake that up a lot. There's a lot more chances to be able to bounce between points of view, and um, usually it's really small things like you get a shot of someone looking, and then a shot of something they see, and then a shot back to them, and like they make it like they smile, right? Like that's how we understand it's their point of view. This movie is saying. Beyond just like pans and zooms and shaky cams, beyond maybe some color grading, what else can we do to talk about? Hold on a second. My YouTube, one of my things just started making sounds on my computer, and
Oh,
I'm not sure why. I think I opened a third or fourth. Was that you? I'm hearing this through? No,
no.
that was so bizarre. Something just like is making audio on my computer. We're gonna cut this out. Oh, it's my phone just like started auto playing the video.
Oh, amazing.
Wild that it's like, yeah, let's open YouTube and just start playing this. Okay. Uh, we're gonna cut this out. So it's the what this movie does, and it takes us from comics and of course lots of other art mediums. I mean, it's simply painting, right? Like paint people who study visual art, painting, sculpture, whatever. It's a you'll see a thing and they'll talk about the emotions of it, and if you're not versed in that space, it can be really hard to track or follow. And you just nod your head and like, yeah, sure, this is a sad painting, I guess. Like maybe sometimes it's blue, and you're like, yeah, we associate blue with sadness. But there'll be other things going on. That you're like, I don't fully follow it. But the more you study and you learn, the more you can kind of start to see these connections. And so there's this choice here that says, let's go and let's connect our emotional cores of our characters these point of views of our characters and amplify them in not only the traditional film language, but in this other comic and visual language, in the colors. The like the first one of the first ones they do that's so obvious is when she hugs her father and they're in a dark blue room, and they're from their hug spreads this big pink just like blast, and we all get that. We can't necessarily speak to it one to one, but we all understand it in terms of like this is love representing itself. Um, and this gets to, and I won't go too deep in this because I've already done a whole lecture on this and it's on my channel about psychic distance, which is another writing term, which is essentially like how close is the reader or the audience to your characters, and the ways in which not only are you like choosing what level of closeness, but when do you choose to be closer versus when do you choose to be farther away, and using that as a tool as a creator to create some new emotional depths and differences. And the first movie I think just teaches us so much how to do this, and the second movie says let's keep doing that. Let's turn that up to 11, which doesn't mean let's stay close to our characters all the time, but let's choose really judiciously how to go into and out of this effect. So if you're curious about that, check out my other video. But yeah.
Yeah, but exactly, it's the choice that feels important, right?
Yes.
Because when I say that, like, one of the things that I really love about Gwen's world is how it becomes abstracted, but
Mm-hmm.
it gives you solid ground first, right?
Yes.
It will clearly establish the train before it shows you the images in the train. It
Mm-hmm.
establishes um, the backgrounds in her house and like the posters on her wall before it starts changing those posters into shapes. And it's only using those moments of high emotion and emotional conversation as the moments of when to abstract what you
Yes.
see.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I want to talk just like so briefly about why in her universe are we playing with abstract colors and brush strokes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think it speaks to her background as a dancer personally.
Mm-hmm.
Like she describes herself as a trained dancer. It's the grace of a trained dancer in the first movie when she's sort of like berating Miles about whether or not he can do this. We see her ballet flats, so we know she has that ballet training. And for me, I've I've had many people I've known struggle with how to respond to dance or how to critique dance or
Mm-hmm.
how to even enjoy dance. Actually, that's the bigger one, is how to enjoy dance. And for me, I just think it's really simple because like dance is evoking feeling, right? And when you see movement and bodies in relation to one another, like it evokes meaning and feeling inside. You know, it's not a medium where we have text, like literal words to say to each other that have meaning. It is all about movement and feel. And so for me, that's why this is such a perfect place to play with abstraction, because it's within the character's backstory that she engages in a medium like music, for example, and
Yeah.
drumming, um, which is also within her backstory, that
Yeah.
that doesn't rely on text; it relies on felt emotion, which is why I think we see this define her world as opposed to Miles's world
Mm-hmm.
or anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've talked about too that like it's the palette and the kind of abstraction is influenced by like her line of comics and the art that was done for those covers and those interiors, that at the time were just, so aesthetically engaging. And you all kind of have to go back to like why did that art, I think that's Jason Latour, choose, whatever creative team, like what was their choice for that, because it works for this character and then works so well to kind of continue to influence this character outside of comics and into this like film legacy.
Yeah.
um yeah, I think some other things too, just uh speaking about art style and these choices to play with this, um is what it lets you do. I'll say this. There was a discussion on Twitter maybe a week, 2 weeks ago about, I think Trung posted this. I don't remember who, about like, hey, comic artists, how often do you put setting in your backgrounds in your panels? When and where and all those, like how often you do that? And there's tons of great comments and or people, and it's often like to set up the physical space. Like it helps to ground, to know where people are, and then once people are grounded, like you can take folks out. But there's a wide variety of people who just from there it's all washes, or it's all white, or it's still always hyper realistic. Like there's decisions that are made there, or there should be. And so this movie does the same thing. It sets those things up, but then when it chooses to go into these abstractions, it makes the most of it, not only in those emotional colors, but I think um, Scott McCloud refers to this as like iconography. That when you kind of wash out the background, you can do super cool things like behind Gwen during that. I think this is during the hands up arrest speech. Like she takes her mask off, but behind her are the eyes of her mask show up on like kind of floating in this painterly effect, and it's so cool. And then it cuts to her father, and opposite of her lush colors and this mask is an almost all white border with like a dark black, dark blue single line that goes behind him. To me, I see that are like this is the art, like is the Rorschach. What do you see in it? Intentional, non-intentional, who knows? My read of that is like it's the thin blue line. They have chosen this icon that we understand to represent police in the space, as like his sort of grounding thing. And you
And
watch that her colors bleed into it as she talks to him. She disrupts that imagery a little bit, but then he still holds to it by the end of that sequence. And she ends hers kind of with this full black wash at the end, and that's just so cool.
yeah, it's a moment of identity, right? Like because that is a major question. That is Captain Stacy's major question to answer is, are you a father to your daughter? Are you going to listen to your daughter, or is your identity as a cop more important? So
Yes.
like I'm with you about that. That iconography feels really, really intentional. The other piece I want to talk about is some of the imagery and Gwen's point of view. And Stephanie, like you are right on cue in the comments. I'm just going to read your comment. Stephanie says, "Oh, a thought I had about the Gwen and her
Mm.
father moment. I don't know if this is accurate time wise, but I remember that line art is there and dissipates at one point and then comes back.
Mhm.
Do you feel like maybe it could be because of the fact that she's breaking and rebuilding the canon in her universe?"
Ooh,
Oh, oh,
that's
I
cool.
think that is an absolutely beautiful read on that moment. The
Yeah.
world sort of like losing touch and coming back, and I love that read, and I just want to build off it because the thing that really sticks out for me, that is one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie for me in terms of background.
Hmm.
Um, the two my two favorite moments in terms of background art and abstraction is that scene where she's talking with her father when she reveals her identity to him, and this final scene between the two of them where he quits his job
Hmm.
and accepts his daughter. And and for me, the we really see the world start to abstract exactly as you've said, Stephanie, and then come back together in like new, really beautiful imagery. And I think as he says, "I've quit," halfway through your speech, we see behind him just this like beautiful circle surrounding him, framing him, and then we see a lot of like other beautiful painterly circles behind him too. And for me, I really read it as him saying, like, or him feeling like, Gwen, my daughter is my universe. Like
Mm.
she is my everything. She's the best thing I've ever done. I think is lines that he says to her,
Mm-hmm.
and it's such it's such an emotional moment and like huge catharsis. And we're about to talk about theme here in a minute, but I think it perfectly illustrates the felt moment of when this theme of listening lands,
Yeah.
and she's finally gotten through to him, and he has finally understood like what losing this relationship could mean and what she really means to him. So that imagery I think is like maybe one of my favorite moments in this whole movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to go back to that and track that, Stephanie, to your point of like, is this moment of losing the line art tied in some ways to the canon rebuilding or being rewritten? Although, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but like that whole sequence, there is a huge question there about like, was he supposed to die at some point there, or does it simply Spider-Man 2099, does Miguel appearing change her story in some ways? Like there's definitely like a pivotal thing happening during that. So I think there's lots of reasons for that. To me, I think the removing of the line art is again just another way to get closer to these people. We are abstracting past this physical space and more into that emotional. And so like yeah, like drop that because we can still let the really strong brush strokes and colors tell the story they need to.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
I feel like I was gonna say one other thing about that moment. Give me like 5 seconds to think about
while
it.
you think about it, I'm just
Oh, yeah. So I remembered it.
go.
So you remember whatever you were about to say. I just want to say that, like, again, I'm not an art historian, but I will say that I have enough faith in these artists to assume that some of these abstract moments are either, like, first of all, like really incredible, beautiful invention by these artists, but also very potentially references to other abstract artists in this space that share similar aesthetics. I am just nowhere near studied enough to be able to point to what I'm interpreting as universe and be like, oh yeah, that's clearly a reference to this person. You know what I mean? Because the truth is, I just have enough faith to know that these artists know exactly the sandbox they're playing in.
Mhm.
I don't know it yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, all right, let's see here. The other note is just about Robert Rodriguez being involved in interiors and covers. I know that I'm looking up Jason Latour was as well, but now I'm like yeah, Jason Latour. I'm curious if there was like some pencils and colors and combinations of both, but either way, I really hope that the artists who are involved in making these things are seeing some sort of compensation or recognition, just because it's a thing we know Marvel has kind of dropped the ball on in the past is taking and building out these really great visual details and sometimes even the story details and then using them for their own movies without really sending anything back to the folks who are developing this to begin with. So
Yeah, that's a
uh,
really good point.
yeah, just to kind of, I mean, I feel like this wraps at least our very explicit section on the art styles and the universes and those sort of pieces and kind of lead us into plot. But I'll kind of kick this off a little bit. You already said this that this movie is Gwen's film. That like this is we kind of have her point of view, and so when I talk about plot, I think the things in this area are just not necessarily go through the whole film, but just what I think it's doing on a story beat by beat level that kind of pulls you through that works really well. And I think it starts with the framing device that we get. This is this internal monologue at the top that uh, not only I mean, she's essentially, if we were to timestamp that monologue, it happens at the end of the movie, right? Like it is one to one. Thank you. It was both of them. Yeah. So if we follow Gwen's opening monologue and timestamp it, it's probably part of the same monologue she says at the end of the film, right? You would imagine her thinking these thoughts as the film was wrapped up. It's all this ask to be, will you join me? It's kind of her ask at the end, and so she's telling you like this is what happened, and it's
She's
so cool
convincing you to join her
she's
band.
trying to convince you to join your band and saying like here's what I know and here's why I know it. And so it's really cool about that opening monologue. It's very comic, I think, to do that, to have those monologues where like when you have a caption box in a comic, you don't always know when it's being said. And so it could be said in the past, it could be said in the future. It can play with time really well. And they're doing that. It leads to this credence that it's her film. And then additionally, I think what's really cool is if you watch that sequence over, there's a ton of like images about what is going to happen in this movie. We get screenshots of what's going to happen in the future, different key critical moments that without the context, we just know something is, these characters are involved. And there's even a few that I feel like we don't maybe see in this movie, so I have to imagine are going to come later. But it's a very cool just framing or plot device there. Um, yeah,
Can I just I feel like looking at our outline, we have like maybe just a couple more things to say about Gwen. So this feels like a good
yeah,
point. Am I catching you in a good point where I
go for it.
can
Yeah, yeah.
there's just one little thing that I want to say when I think about this being Gwen's movie as opposed to Miles. And for me, I liken it to Lindsay Ellis has this really brilliant essay about Beauty and the Beast and about how in that movie, the Beast is our protagonist because he is the one who changes throughout the course of the movie. Belle is pretty self actualized in the beginning of that movie. She just wants to go on an adventure and then she does, but she's still intact with all of her values and everything, and we see it like show up in her behavior. And I really liken that character to Miles in this one. like, not to say that Miles doesn't have conflict and he isn't going through things, but like Miles has like very entrenched values that he's built. And in this movie, we see other people not cause him to waver on it, but cause him to think about it, right? And I think he just ends up stronger entrenched in those values,
Mhm.
right? Gwen is really the one who changes her values here. So to me, she is more akin to the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, right? Because the Beast is the one who is like, I don't want to let anybody in, I don't want anybody close, and like through like the kindness of somebody else changes his mind. So um, Gwen is it has a similar trajectory to the Beast. Is just to say, which is like I think she's our sneaky protagonist in this movie, just like the Beast is the sneaky protagonist in Beauty and the Beast.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I really love is the way in which they use her shoes to illustrate her character growth, right? You have this line from Captain Stacy, and I think it actually comes at the end of the movie where he says, I always taught you to do things by the book, which really makes sense for his character as a cop, right? Um, and so at the very beginning of the movie and in the last film, we see her in ballet shoes, ballet slippers, which is like, which I think is illustrative of a really strict and trained rule following art form that informs her personality. She is trained, she is following rules. That is what she's doing. Which I just have to throw in here. There's a moment towards the beginning of the film where Gwen drops from the air into the ground in a spider pose, but she's like on point on one of her ballet slippers, which I think is just such a beautiful touch.
Mhm.
But throughout the film, we see the ways in which she has her mind change and the people around her who are influencing her, right? Um, Hobie is a gigantic influence to her, and he is the one that gives her iconic chucks, right? Her teal chucks, and I just think that's like listening to people and then having them change her mind. Like we literally see visual cues of that in her costume.
Mhm.
She goes from this strict rule follower, listening to people, and then being like, no, I got to be a little bit more punk about this.
Mm.
So it's really incredible to see in her character design the ways in which she shifts
She
her line of
evolves.
thinking.
Yeah, I love
Uh,
that.
and this is such a yeah, thank you. And this is just a little throwaway line. It doesn't have anything to do with plot, but I just have to throw that in here because it was something I noticed in my third viewing. But like Gwen is has a bunch of sweaters and she's leaving sweaters everywhere, and it's like a plot point that's like brought up a couple of times. Rio, Miles's mom, uh, knows that Gwen has been in Miles's room because she finds Gwen's sweater there. When we meet Hobie for the first time, he talks about how Gwen has left a jumper in his universe. And then at the end of the film, we see her talking to Miles's parents in one of Miles's
Hoodies.
hoodies.
Yeah.
And I just, for the longest time, I was like, oh, this is interesting. But it is perfect setup and payoff for like she's protecting her spider identity with all of these jumpers, essentially. Like she is just shown up places and has been in a position to have been caught by people or need to talk to civilians. And so she needs to have sweaters on her to hide her costume. So I remember seeing her walk out in his sweater and being like, why is she wearing his sweater? And then I'm like,
Mm.
oh, because she can't show him
Yeah.
this ghost spider costume. Like that's it's going to be confusing and she's going to have to explain that. She even says when she walks out, like, oh, I came in through Miles's window, which is normal, just like her like wearing a sweater. So
Mhm.
I love that little plot point about Gwen's jumpers.
Yeah, it's fun. That's the sort of thing where it's like you wonder if slash how that might show up again in the third one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, I'm gonna jump to the subs and payoffs. Unless you want to speak about the next one. I can't remember if that was your.
Oh yeah, I think it's connected to what I was talking about in terms of like Miles already being a pretty self-actualized character in this
Mm.
movie. It just feels really important to mention Rio, his mother's speech about belonging, about how in her universe and in her space, she's done all of this work to make sure that Miles knows he loves and belongs where he is and wherever he wants to be. Um, and that she'll always love him. It's like such a really beautiful speech that she delivers to him. And I think it's that exact speech and that way that she has raised him as a parent that really makes him fully prepared to go into battle with Miguel
Mm,
O'Hara and some of the because when she's talking about what she thinks she's talking to him about is college. You know,
yes,
she thinks
yes,
when you go to college, I want you to know that you belong there, and I want you to take care of the little boy inside of you who might feel like he doesn't belong. But we see him just like immediately put into that exact setting, but it's Spider Society, it's not college. He's brought to this place where later Miguel tells him, "You don't belong here."
hmm,
Um, and Miles has that love and that level of self actualization to be like, I think you're wrong about
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I think you're wrong. And I think that is the reason why when he tries to go back to his own universe, he's finally ready to tell his mom about his
yeah.
identity, which goes wrong. But
Goes on.
I think that leads us pretty well into setups
Yeah,
and payoffs.
no, totally. And one thing I think, just to kind of touch on really, really solid writing, is it's so smart because again, everything is a choice. There is nothing necessarily deep about Miles going to Princeton. It comes up as a true fact. It's a thing he has talked about. You know, like he clearly when the counselor brings it up, he's like, "Yep, Princeton is what I want to do," and then he has to argue his way around like why, and it talks about the dark matter and the collides, and it's very clear. Oh, Princeton to him is a means to travel to see his friends. Like that is his want. Is I want to see my friends again. Um, but that's set up in such a way that he gets to speak with his parents and they get to talk about these other places and he can speak about there's a thing where like his line about like there are things I want to do and things I want to learn and the people who can teach me aren't in Brooklyn. Like it's such a good line that he gets to say out loud and he gets to tell his truth because he's talking about Gwen and he's talking about Peter. Um, but his parents are like, "What do you mean?" There's spider. Like it doesn't. You get to just play that mystery really well. That's just to me, it's just really concrete, solid writing when you have two people, you know, with different information into it. It's just a rich
It's
conversation.
it's perfect because they're having two conversations at
Yes,
once, right?
yes,
And like what is spoken to you here has meaning in a different space than you
yes,
intended it. It's just really beautiful writing in that way.
yeah. It's just so good. But yeah, plot. To me, plot is like two things. One, it is the beats that bring you from scene to scene, and I think this movie does it really well. Like we always know why we are where we are, and given that it's a 2.5 hour movie with you know like gosh, who knows how many different setups and locations and um, beat by beat, like it's always pretty clear. There's no part where we're like, wait, why are we here again? It all tracks really well. But the other thing for me, especially in like comics and especially in action stories, um, is you need to land your setups and payoffs. You need to be able to have really good concrete action or reasons. The secret to mysteries and twists and all of that is that you've primed your viewer for it. That like I think the thing I've heard is like a really good twist is one that you never saw coming, but when you see it, it couldn't be anything else. It's just so clear, and so I think one thing that a lot of other Marvel movies, I think, frankly, struggle with, and this could be due to rewrites or what have you, is that like people in fights suddenly have new powers or devices or technology or things that like show up that just kind of help them out, or they're like dragged from one place to the next. It doesn't really follow really well, but this movie does such a good job at establishing things and then revealing them and playing off them later. um, and just as a general writing tip, my like some of those go-to rules is that like you can really establish anything you want to in low stakes environments or even early. I think it's still something that is high stakes early in the film, but it's early, so you're allowed to introduce it there. And so like a really concrete example of that is Miles's new power or like his new way to use his venom power, which is he mentions it briefly in his character introduction that he's got something new going on with his venom and it's absorbing power. He uses it for the first time on that big like um, kind of wall in the Alchemex. He's trying to break that barrier, but it's not perfect. He doesn't just get to pull it off. He's not, oh, I've got a new power, boom, uses it. It's still faulty. Um, and
Can I
yeah,
point out too that I think you mentioned this, but it took me maybe on my third viewing to catch this. But in when he's doing his monologue about the ways in which he's changed, he shows us that power too.
yes.
He like pulls it from the robot,
Hmm.
and that's when he causes the blackout.
Right, and it doesn't work, right? So it's like I'm trying this new thing. So you
Yeah,
see it once there, we see him use it on the grid, and then when he's in that trap later, he uses it with the added learning from Hobie that like use the whole hand,
yeah.
right? Which is even when Hobie tells him that the first shot, he takes time to look at it, right? Like that again, everything's done with intention. We register that beat that he's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the trap, he uses it there, and we watch him, and he's not sure if it's going to, and he breaks out, and then he uses it one last time against Miguel.
I'm so sorry
Not
to
yet,
interrupt you.
not yet. He used it one last time against Miguel, and he does it confidently. There's not a like, is this going to work? Not going to work. He knows it's going to, and so it's the difference between all of that setup versus if he was just fighting Miguel and goes, guess what? I can absorb powers now and absorbs it. It doesn't work that way. It's the fact that we've seen him do this, so that by the time he gets to use it, we go, hell yeah, like let's see this in action. And it's really solid plotting for action and superpowers. But yeah, what were we gonna say?
Yeah, sorry. I should just let you finish things and then I'll add to them. There's really, really smart written dialogue in the first time he tries to use it on the collider barrier.
Hmm.
Because he has his fingertips touching. He's trying to work it. And what's great is it's kind of visually difficult to tell what he's doing. And
Mm,
it's only through dialogue that we know he's absorbing the energy because you have Pavitra and Gwen being like, are you charging that? What are you doing? It really looks like you're charging it. And he's like, no, I'm absorbing it. I'm absorbing it. So it's like, it's a really comedic moment, but it's letting us know in a way that like the visual language is having
yeah.
a little bit of trouble on its own. These two things get to work in tandem to tell us what's happening.
Oh yeah, all the best ones with exposition in this film are parodies with comedy.
Yeah.
The Miles and Gwen swinging through Amubatan are talking about Spot, and they're saying like he has to go here to do this thing. Like he needs to find a place with a collider to increase his powers. That's what he's doing. But what we're all paying attention to is Pavitra saying, "Oh my gosh, this romantic tension is so funny."
Yes.
And so like they're pairing these two things together the same way that like in the first movie they're in the vent and we're hearing about like you've got 24 hours and they're going to run the collider again and Peter's just making fun of it the whole time because if we hear that straight it's just a thought to kind of fall back and they're saying look there are plot points there is the nitty gritty exposition and the signs of this world that we're going to need to land and figure out but we're going to have fun doing it and so that again is another plot writing just strength of this film. um, I'm going to talk through some other just setups and payoffs that I think are just really great. Hobie shows up. They're walking to go meet Miguel, and he's just stealing things off the wall. And it's just a character moment for him. It's just funny. He's like, "Who cares? No one needs this. Doesn't do anything." And Miles is like, "I mean, it's a little weird, but whatever." And then at the end of the film, Hobie's built a watch, and it's 100% clear where he got those watch parts from. Is that he's the reason? Like, why are you here? What are we doing? I don't really know, but I'm figuring like he's already preparing in that way, which I think is just so fun. Versus if Hobie and if Gwen opens the box and her father's built her a watch, or she found one else somewhere else. It rings hollow versus we saw him do this thing. We know he wants to help. Here's what he's done. Um,
It's also a great character moment for Hobie, right? Because uh, he's giving us his character, and there's a lot of humor in his character introduction. He says like, you know, I play in a band, but I don't like to be part of a group or whatever. And Miles is like, "Are you in a band?" And he's like, "I don't believe in consistency."
right.
So like we see the ways in which like his punkish ways and his like maybe lack of consistency is really actually it's a facade, right? It
Mm,
is it
mm-hmm.
is smoke screen so that when you see him pull a piece of technology off of Miguel's lair, not even Miguel thinks anything of
Yeah.
it because he thinks like he's just anti-establishment for the fun of it. But like Hobie has very real intention. Know the war you're fighting in before you enlist. Like he is
Yeah.
very smart about the ways in which he's going about some of the things he does through humor.
Miguel is so, I mean, explicitly says, I'm not even going to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
You're too much. And Hobie's like, perfect. And then disappears behind a corner to steal more shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he's up to. That's why he's there. Um, in that same vein about like planning or preparation, during the chase sequence after Miles breaks out and everyone's chasing him, there's this constant conversation about like, what does this kid, he's 15 years old, what does he even think he's doing? Where is he going? What is he doing? Everyone is like, what's his plan? He's being chased by 100 people. And we get a moment on the train at the end where he goes, hey, I brought your hundreds of spider people miles from your secret clubhouse. And you go, oh shoot. But it could ring a little hollow. It could ring a little like, oh, like Miles like lucked out and figured that out or got easy with it. But there's a moment earlier in the chase scene that I think is pivotal to watch, which is um he's in that vent room and we see it when again, we're combining, we're doing, everything has more than one purpose. Miles is listening to Peter. They're having a conversation about why Peter has like cares about Miles, and Miles is looking down, and the lighting does this really cool thing where like we see this like stuttering effect that we can kind of interpret maybe as a fan of some sort. We see it, I think, once from above before we go to this like parallel or profile view, and it like lights his face in a way that kind of matches his dialogue. So it's bringing that like energy of the scene into the emotion, but he's also looking down and observing. There's like one or two
Yes.
moments where he's tests the ground to see how strong it is. He's looking below, and you get the sense that he's like either counting or tracking something. And so the moment they all show up, he tears the floor, he dives in, and he makes like 13 perfect like thread the needles through all these gears, and we watch every other spider person hit them because they are just straight on chasing. He is always looking ahead to the next step during that sequence. He's just also like Hobie smoke screening. He's playing a little bit dumb. He's playing a little bit innocent. Yes, it's some improv, but there's very clear like what's next sort of thing. So that when he gets to the train at the top, he goes like, oh, he's going to the moon. Like maybe right then he doesn't know I'm going to go up this train, but when he hears that, he keeps climbing. Right? He's like, but like his plan isn't going to the moon. It's always to get back to that device, and we
Yeah.
don't see the exact moment because we're not that close to him. We're a little bit more distant from him during that sequence. It isn't a internal monologue. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because the people who are asking the questions in that scene are the folks chasing. We get a lot of Gwen, we get a lot of Kirby, we get a lot of Spider Woman, we get a lot of Miguel. Like those are the characters we're attached in that sequence, not Miles, up until the emotional peak at the top of it. And that I think is just a thing you'll see in really good action manga or other stories where the team with the plan, we don't get to see it.
Yeah. What's that feels very heisty,
Oh
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that you bring that up because it's another perfect example of like information overloading your audience in a good way, in a
Yes.
trusting way. Because as he's doing all of that calculating, like Peter is having a really emotional moment with him, essentially
Mm-hmm.
saying like you're the reason why I had kids and I
Mm-hmm.
love you. And it's giving us two important information points at once, right? And so there's really beautiful economy of story in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And my last thing here, I mean, we're talking about plot and setup and payoff and foreshadowing, is the big twist, right? There's a giant twist in this film. It is what makes it really fun to go back and watch this. Um, yes, Charles, I love it when a plan comes together. Oh man, I'm a huge A-Team fan. That just I love heists, but the A-Team is nothing but like, hey, every episode we've got a stupid heist. It's gonna be great. Um, but yeah, the big twist. This is what's fun to watch, and what's funny is like I remember in the first movie when we saw it, the big audience reaction scene is in the Prowler's apartment when Miles goes to like try to talk to his uncle, and the Prowler takes his mask off, and you think he's being chased. So you're like, oh my gosh, they've chased Miles here, and it's he's just coming home. And like I got to witness Shalee live that revelation because I knew the story of Miles and his uncle, and so like that was it was very fun to see her like go like, oh my god, and then audience after audience hear that gasp of like, oh my gosh, what's happening? So the big twist at the end of this film, it gives me that same energy of like we get close to it, and I kind of just like lean forward in my seat a little bit so I can like watch people on either side and be like, all right, when do y'all get it, and how do y'all get it? Because they choose us to do a nice slow reveal into it. But again, I haven't seen many people online say I don't believe the twist. Like this doesn't make sense. Everyone sees it. It surprises them, and they're like, "Oh, of course, there's no other way." Because one of the first things we hear about Miles and his spider is from Spot early in the movie, and he says, "Hey, your spider came from another universe." It's set up in the last film. People have already been caught this, that it glitches in the last film in his universe. Um, Miguel, of course, hits on this later on the train. He says, your spider came from another universe. You were not supposed to be Spider-Man. And we get, of course, we spend so much time with that device, the go home machine, and we haven't seen the payoff for that yet. That's when you need like a good story. It's like taking time, like everything, especially something like this. It is all mechanical and precise. They've decided to spend 5 minutes talking to you through this machine. Oh yeah, it finds the person, it takes the person, it sends them back, and does all these things. Like you can even trace this back to the reason we have the vulture in the first sequence is so we can set up the machine in that sequence, so we can send Miles home in the last sequence, right? Like it's all set up and payoff. And then they get, knowing that they know where it's going to go, they get to just be cheeky with it. We get this, all the universes get their super titles. So it's like, where are we in what universe? And so they get to throw on screen, filling half the screen is like Earth 1610 Brooklyn. Like you better catch that.
At the top of the film, when we're in when we
We're in
switch
Miles'
from
universe.
Gwen's
Yes.
to Miles, they let us know we're in 1610. Is
I think
it
1610 like B is not, I don't know if it's listed there, but I was doing some research. It's like 1610 is the ultimate universe in the comics, which this is akin to, but is not one to one. But again,
cheeky?
they get to hide it, right? They're like, here's Brooklyn, Earth 1610, and we're like, okay, there's a number, and we get to forget about it. But they show us the spider center screen like 10 times. It's like got number 42 on it, and when the machine recognizes him, it says like Earth 42. And so, as someone who like all I do is study story, the moment he goes to the machine, I'm like, oh shit, oh he's doomed. I knew it. And then you see it on the screen and I go, oh no. So I actually got to have a little bit of fun to be like, when does everyone else get it? I was trying to track you the whole time. Like, I don't know if she's figured out yet. Like, I want to like start shaking you, but I like don't want to say like what it is.
What also feels really important is they are throwing everything they can at you in this moment to obfuscate
Oh yeah.
the explicit clues that they're sending him
Yes.
to the wrong universe, right?
Yes.
Which is that they are smash cutting Gwen's story. We get Gwen's like very emotional conversation, I think, with her father in the middle of him. Oh no, that's not
Not
true.
yet. That's later.
No, yeah, yeah. But we get
Yes.
Gwen in 1610B. We get Drew and Jessica, Drew, Ben, and Miguel also in that universe in separate threads, all looking for Miles. It's great because they're all asking the question that we should be asking, but we're information overload in that
Yes.
moment. Like it's harder to catch where he actually is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all of those smash cuts of like different points of view are very intentional so that you don't get ahead of what the twist
Yes.
is, and the people that are ahead of it, they get to feel something a
You
little
get to watch
special.
it. Yeah. So there's that piece, and then yeah, as we transfer, it's so smart. We send Miles. We don't fall right away. We have the scene with Gwen. Gwen is sent, and then we get to see both of them, and we get it cut from Earth 42 to Gwen's universe to 1610, and there's been enough of a visual difference, and it's raining everywhere. But it's like, oh, but they show up through a portal in this like red space. Is it the same? And like his background is green, but theirs kind of is too. Like the way the light is hitting, it's hard to like prove 100%. But it's more that like, yeah, it's so fun. Like, I think a lot of the lighting in their space is outside of that red is green, where a lot of his world is green and the like lighting is a darker red. It's kind of like inverted space.
But I remember being like, something's going on when we see this red welcome sign so
Mm-hmm.
many times. Because for me, when I am seeing that red welcome sign, I'm thinking like thematically, what does it mean?
Yes.
I'm like, well, are they're not welcome in this universe, right? Because they're trying to take him down. But like, actually, it is a very important set piece in establishing the fact that Miles is in a different world than all of them,
Yes.
because you have Miguel at the front of the welcome sign, and at one point you do have Miles at the back of the welcome
Uh-huh.
sign. But it's pretty clear in being able to view Miguel's side of it that like
They
not
would
the
have
same
noticed.
place. They
Yeah.
would have One would have noticed the other, especially with spider sense. Like,
Something would have tripped them.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's so great to have that. And then we get the bedroom scene, and it's so fun because like the bedroom is dark, we're focusing on the conversation between Miles and Rio. We keep cutting outside to Gwen as she gets closer and closer and is listening, and we interpret she's listening to what's happening in there, but slowly some clues start to change. So some things that I think are really great is like I believe rain stops in one but not the other. One thing someone said, I'd have to go back and watch this, is that Miles' animation changes when he goes to Earth 42. So in the first movie, there's a lot of discussion about him being animated on like the ones or the twos sort of thing, that like as he gets closer to his prowess, he animates on ones. It's a smoother animation style. It's a very cool thing we're playing that we've not played with in 3D animation spaces in these bigger movies. And apparently when he goes back again in this way, they switch him back. He's back to animate on the twos during that sequence.
Amazing.
Um, so that's all going on. Of course, we've already said, we're purposely mixing things up. But one of the things that bedroom scene does so well is it's our second bedroom scene. We spent time in there earlier with Gwen and Miles, not just to get a little bit of character, but to establish this as a set piece. We specifically take a robot, we tear it out of a package, we put it on a shelf, and we play that as a joke, but that is a clue. It's telling you that that robot is on that shelf. And so you can go back and you can watch the scene with Miles, and that shelf is over his shoulder for like minutes at a time, right? Like it's just there. There's no robot on it.
Yeah.
Right. Other pieces are different. Some of the posters are different. There's a little punching bag on the wall instead of the boxing gloves. Like there are these things that they are openly saying you're not going to get this.
The big one for me is there is a logo that almost looks like a Supreme logo over Miles's bed in 1610B that says sashimi on
Yeah.
it, and it's red, so you really pick it out amongst everything else. And then when you go to the other world, it's completely different Supreme style logo poster, but it says something completely different. I think it begins with an O. I couldn't catch what the word was.
Funny.
It was not sashimi,
so it's great. And what's fun about this is like at any point in these, you get to slowly, like, people are going to start picking this up. Like I feel like the people we were sitting next to 2 nights ago, it was a couple, and one of them was like, I think at the machine, like kind of just like and like leaned over to tell like her partner something, but they like clearly like trying to whisper, like couldn't figure it out, whatever. And then like once they get into the scene with like Rio, I watched her like tense up, like she was on edge, like this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right, and it all leads to who's Spider-Man, and just the silent pause around that line, and you get to feel the uneasiness rise. And then he's like starts tracking and following her out of the bedroom, which kind of closely matches from the first movie, that same shot into the living room, where we have a very clearly blue apartment, and now it's like a dark orange. Like the paint is different in this apartment. I think the big one that you hear a lot of people suddenly gasp is the glitch. Like if they haven't caught it by the glitch, he glitches out in his living room and everyone goes, "Oh no." And then we get the pan towards the door. He senses something, someone is coming, and in my mind, I'm like, it's gonna be Miles, right? It's like it's like Miles about to walk in and ruin this for him, and then it's not, and it's spoilers. If you're still here, come on, what are you doing? Or if you take it late, spoilers. It's Uncle Aaron, and you're like, oh, of course, like it's all changing from here, and that like the energy just shifts. Their handshake into the Earth 42. Like if you didn't get it yet, you get it now. Like the music, you're like gutted, you're uneasy. It is great, and it's so good because like all of that is serving to bring you closer to Miles emotionally, because we are all like, oh no. And yeah, it's a incredible twist all the way down to Miles 42. Like that lasts like 10 minutes, and it's so much fun to have that sequence juxtaposed with Gwen figuring it out, talking to the parents, and then like the last two pieces of her bringing the band back together / for the first time, and this scene in the apartment, which again is just like one of the biggest gaps in the audience, is like the Prowler mask reveal. It is 1-to-1 a Prowler mask reveal in that apartment in the dark, and it's just like,
it's so good. I think about too, they also explicitly we get internal monologue from Miles and from Gwen that he's in the wrong universe. They both realize it at the same time, which is great, because as you see Gwen starting to creep into his bedroom, you really notice no way Miles is in that bedroom. You would see him in the window speaking to his mother,
There's a
and he's not
one-to-one
there.
cut. There's a one-to-one cut in the apartment
Yes.
where when like is either still in the ceiling or like drops to the floor, and then it cuts to Miles and Rio in a different space, and there's no denying it. They're like the only thing
Oh,
you're like, oh,
it's
maybe it's a time difference. Like you're
yeah.
maybe it's a time, like maybe time has passed, or this is the
It's
past. No,
so
no, no.
it's
It's
so
so good.
audacious. I'm like, and I will fully admit it was not until it was halfway through me really believing that Rio didn't know who Spider-Man was when it clicked for me.
Hmm.
So I tell this to Daniel all the time. Like I am really good at picking up on major reveals literally seconds before they happen. There's plenty of clues, as Charles says in this comment here. I remember registering the go home machine saying Earth 42, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's what the spider said. LOL, not realizing I'd conflated the two numbers. Yeah, I was like the exact same way. I like believed everything the film was like cheekily wanting me to believe, but giving
Hmm.
me clues that something was up. And it wasn't until yeah, partway through it, she's like, "Oh, is that for Comics Con?" Did I start to be like, oh no, she
Oh
really
no.
doesn't, because like she and again, this is payoff, right? Because
Yes.
set up earlier in the movie, she's like doing a crossword, and she goes, "I hear that new Spider-Man is Puerto Rican." And you have Miles again, comedy, being like, "No, I heard he's actually Dominican," and like that is set up to be like, no, Rio knows exactly who Spider-Man is. Of
Hmm.
course she does because their
Hmm.
whole household is consumed with
Hmm.
Spider-Man. But like that lets us know for sure she would not hear that name and not have recognition.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not even a different Spider-Man in this universe. It's the no, what is a Spider-Man?
Yeah,
Which is incredible.
yeah,
So yeah, it's an incredible twist. It is. I think it's so big is the reason why people actually aren't talking about it, because they
yeah,
all want. They're like that was huge. Um, everyone is making the Empire Strikes Back like connection that like it feels it has that weight of like the Vader like I'm your father's. It's sort of like I he doesn't say I'm not the Prowler. He says something else. Um, like that line right before, and then it's I'm Miles Morales, but delivered with a stronger like Spanish Puerto Rican accent because he's grown up without his father. Like that, like Shamik Moore just vocal performance topping the charts.
incredible.
It's so good. Um, yeah, that I mean that's the thing about this film is like it just plots things so well. Every single thing that happens in this movie in the second half, you can draw your line to the first half and when they chose to do it, and you can just be like, "You jerks, you." I thought this was a funny little thing. You're sneaking this here,
Yeah,
which is great. Um, all right, we are 2 hours into this, and we're now genuinely getting to the juicy stuff. I feel
yeah.
like we had to talk about all of that to get to the juicier things, um, which I'll kind of kick off here, which is theme. I said at the top, themes are like my everyone. I think everyone comes to stories, film, movies, TV shows, games, whatever. With this is the thing I'm looking for, right? Like there's lots of things I like or I enjoy, but to me, like a good movie has this like for myself is like has a solid theme, and if it doesn't have a solid theme I have a hard time liking it or even saying it's good, not that it couldn't have other great things elsewhere. So for me,
Stephanie says, "Bring the
bring the
juice."
juice. We're gonna dig into it. For me, this movie is killer in the space, but I want to kind of just talk about what do I mean by theme, because I think there's a lot of very common definitions or different spaces. And I think it can be likened to some degree to like moral. It's kind of like a thesis the movie's asking or a question that's being presented. All good art, I think, is trying to say something about something. And my go-to example, like all the time, is Zootopia, because I think Zootopia is it is very forward with it and does a really good job. And actually, a lot of the Disney 3D movies of that like time period, but 2010 to 2020, even still, I think are really good at nailing a theme. Zootopia's theme is um, like don't trust your first impressions, or like things aren't what you expect them to be. It's very much wolf in sheep's clothing. It's tied very much with pro cop message. It's trying to challenge this idea of like expectations. And so we have, of course, like the Fox character who's actually, a criminal but is good at heart. And a good theme would maybe just leave it there, right? Like, oh, or like a basic one would be like, oh yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. And it comes up maybe once or twice. It's a message that the main character has to learn. Why I think that movie works so well is it is literally baked into like every goddamn scene of that film. So if you go back and watch that movie, every single time someone thinks something is going to happen, the opposite happens, or someone surprises them. So it's like they go to the nudist colony space and they're like, look at all these weirdos, but the weirdos are actually really intelligent and really good at like pinpointing what they need to do next. The whole crime they're solving is that like all these predators, or what is it? It's like yeah, like all these predators are going like extra aggressive, but actually it's like something else. It's at the end of the day, it's not the lion police chief behind it, it's the sheep mayor who's the bad person. It is the final scene, the post credits or comedy scene of some cars racing through through the streets, and it's who's the perp. Like you're like, who do we know is going to when the window rolls down? It's the sloth, the slow character. The entire movie is like, stop assuming your animal is this. Your animal is actually this, and it's great because when you start looking at it that way, it's really fun to kind of see, okay, how are we asking this question in the sequence? Second Spider-Man Tom Holland movie, Far From Home, I think has a really solid theme about lying and what happens, like what are the consequences of lying, and everyone in that movie lies. Miles, Aunt May, and the guy from all the Iron Man movies, I forget his name, are lying to Peter about the relationship, and Peter is lying about being in the costume. I think Aunt May's like the only person who knows, but he doesn't tell MJ, and like that makes things weird. He wants to sit, or so and so wants to sit next to MJ in the plane, or there's some sort of thing about that where like he wants to do this thing, and when asked why he wants to, he makes up a lie like this is actually so and so, like someone's sick, and so they just, oh, I'll swap with you instead. Like if at any point in that movie someone asks for what they want, they probably would get it. The people around them trust them and are going to do it, but they all keep lying, and so it's a whole movie about deception. And Mysterio is all about deception. And so the bigger action, so it's taking these messages, it's baking it into your action and into your broader plot and into your scene level. This is what great theme is. The last thing I'll say on this, kind of before we get back into Spider-Verse, is I don't know where this comes from. I feel like Gene Yang shared this when I was at Hamlin, or someone else did in the space, that like if your theme is really, really good, if you're nailing your theme, you are allowed to say your theme outright in your film and no one bats an eye because you've earned it. And this movie gets to do that with the second theme that we'll talk to. I think there's like two big themes that are happening here. The first one I think ties to Miles really well, and I think gets to the nature of it's Miles's theme in the terms of like self-actualization. It's Miles's truth that Gwen has to learn, but there's a secondary theme that is maybe a broader one that applies to more folks. But the first one I want to talk about is this idea of canon and or fate and or tradition versus anomalies and agency and free will. And this theme works on two levels or multiple levels. It works very much in the plot. We say the canon. Everyone who is watching this has hopefully seen the movie. The whole plot revolves around there are canon events that need to happen, and when they don't happen, worlds implode. But the movie at the same time, as Shalee opened this up with, is it's art that's commentating on itself. It's not talking about the canon in the universe. It's talking about comic book stories. It's talking about Spider-Man stories. It's talking about any story and saying, why do we believe that our stories have to do this thing? We tell ourselves that if our stories don't do these things, don't follow these steps, don't follow these rules, that they aren't going to be good stories. They're not going to work as stories. And challenges the idea that tradition or fate or homage is like more meaningful than innovation, which again is what Spider-Verse as a brand is doing, is it's constantly innovating, but it's also innovating through homage. I think it's doing a thing where it's recognizing what's come before and building on it. And so this is this broader idea.
I can I
Please
interject
in.
with
Yeah.
1 second? This idea of like fate, canon, tradition versus anomalies, things like that. Uh, it I think it hits so well, and I think it hits us well because there are so many Spider-Man movies. Like I
Yes.
have an understanding of Spider-Man canon, never having read a Spider-Man comic,
Yes.
only having seen these movies. And so like I'm able to pick references and know what comes of it. But I also think like an over reliance on canon um can be, well, that's our major question, and we have our own feelings about it. And
Yeah.
for me, I think an over reliance on canon destroys imagination, right? Like
Yes.
it, I think it's inherently a problem. I think about this movies with Mikey, who's a great YouTuber, YouTube essayist. His sort of question about Batman, and he had asked people, I think I'm going to paraphrase what he did, but he put on Twitter a question about
Mm,
like, either like what makes Batman or like tell me about your Batman or something like that. And he had
mm,
people actively in his tweets being like, well, Batman has to be white. That is core to his identity. Batman must be white because he's rich. Also, yikes, guys. Rich people are not just white people. Like, yes, there are systems of power that like concentrate wealth on white people. But if you're like, there's no other artistic entry into this character other than Batman must be a white man and he must be rich, like those are core canon. Um, you get into some pretty dangerous territory, and like Spider-Man is notorious for being in that dangerous territory. Spider-Man as a property has been heavily criticized because of its studio's belief about what is Spider-Man, right?
I mean,
Who can wear the mask? Like, yeah,
Miles is a direct product of the Sony leak.
yes,
I mean, we talked about the Donald Glover earlier, and I think it is incredibly important to realize that um, Sony leak comes out in like 2000 whatever 9, 10, where we just had our second Andrew Garfield movie. We're talking about the third one, and a billion emails come out, and it's there. You see these CEOs talking about what they want to do next, who they want to cast, and at some point in the discussion, it's this question of like Spider-Man is white and will always be a white man, and like brown hair, blue-eyed white man. This is who he is.
straight,
Straight, yeah, like
must
with
of a
a
woman. Yep.
yep, all those pieces, and it's from that where I don't remember the exact timeline of whether it's a fan campaign or Donald Glover says something, or maybe that came out before and the leaks commented on it. But that same sort of event happens where Donald Glover kind of petitions to be, hey, I want to be Spider-Man in the next movie. We're going to reboot the series. Put me in, right?
Yeah.
From that, I know it's a collaboration between Bendis and Pacelli, and I'm sure their editor too. I don't remember who has the first thought. Although I think Bendis is already writing the Spider-Man Ultimate Comics at that time, is like that idea of he sees this fan campaign, or at least they all see this fan campaign and talk about it, and they either hadn't considered or truly for the first time considering what is can Spider-Man be black, and they write Miles comes out of that conversation. And so like this whole idea of canon and metacontextual, like what can we do, what can't we do, I think you can very much look at this film and be like, oh yeah, Miguel is Sony CEOs, right? Miguel is saying you can't do this, you're not allowed to be Spider-Man, you should not be Spider-Man, like you are breaking canon in this sort of way. That's the sort of thing, like that's what I think this film is so cool, is it's talking about this. It says here's our plot, here's our story, it's full of emotion, it is not boring and dry or unexciting or like not serving characters. All of these things serve the characters, but it's also saying let's talk about stories in this broader sense. This gets back, like I said at the start of this, like the stories that I really enjoy are these things that I've now know are called, like metamodernism. There's modernism and postmodernism and metamodernism. That's a whole key piece of it, is this idea of we are talking about why we tell the stories we tell, and we are integrating that into our narratives. um, it's great. And so again, I think specifically we get to talk about things like, why do our superhero stories, our Spider-Man stories, assume tragedy is key to character? We tell ourselves that um, you know Uncle Ben has to die. Gwen has to die. These are the tent poles. These are the pillars that these characters live on. And without them, it's no longer a Spider-Man story. How many people going into the third Tom Holland movie would go, "Ugh, I hate how he's attached. to Iron Man. Ugh, I hate how he's rich and has tech. My Spider-Man is poor. He won't be Peter Parker until he's poor and sad and alone, which is just like, sure. I think if what you want is a retelling of the Spider-Man comics you read when you were a kid or you're familiar with, absolutely you want to see that, right? You want to see. I think so many times it's so understandable to me that comic fans grew up with these stories, supporting these stories, sharing these stories, and the MCU and the Marvel movies get to be this space that celebrates these things they once loved, and it gets to elevate and revere them. You want to see those things that you imagine on the big screen. Like there's power in that. And so when they don't get that, there's this sort of an uneasiness to it. And I think what I think is so cool is like Into the Spider-Verse comes out. We have the scene we all it's both comedy and seriousness. Is like, for me it was my Uncle Ben. For me it was my Uncle Ben. Like they each
For
like
me,
for
it
me
was my Uncle Benjamin.
my
Yeah,
Uncle
like
Benjamin. Like it's played as a joke, but then you get Spider Ham's line about like the hardest part of the job is you can't save everyone, and it's a cartoon pig crying, and you feel that because like I said, it's serving the characters, it's serving the emotion. Um, that comes out in 2018. In 2022, we have or 2022, yeah, we have No Way Home, right? We have all the Peters on the rooftops comforting Tom after he's lost Aunt May. We've subverted who that figure is. It has not been. It has not happened already. It's a great twist, frankly, because we're like assuming he's already had this moment, but he hasn't yet. He gets it here instead. That movie does a lot of really great subversions to build upon this like Spider-Man canon, but it still sticks to it in a way that when this movie comes back and says, Miles still says, like, are you okay with that? Like, if you knew Uncle Ben was going to die, would you let that happen, Peter? Like, he stares him in the face, and it's a direct challenge to not only like all of the Spider-Man things that come, but the ones that have just come out. It is directly challenging or No Way Home. It is directly challenging Into the Spider-Verse. Their big emotional scene, they're saying, why did we believe that then when we made that movie 5 years ago? They're willing to shake that up a little bit. And that to me is just this incredible thesis of this film that I think is probably the thesis of both. This will be part of part one and part two. We're going to answer this a little bit. But I want to kick it over to you for like your favorite like line delivery of this.
yeah, I think so. Obviously, in Miles's world, we see one of the canon events that they refer to, which is the losing of someone close to Spider-Man. Like for us, we've seen plenty of Spider-Man lose Uncle Ben. We see Tom Holland lose Aunt May. Gwen's is different. We see her lose her friend Peter, and Miles, we see him lose his Uncle Aaron. And so we already know that canon event has happened to Miles. The central tension for Miles, and this is a plot point in the film, is that he learns about ASM 90, which is another canon event. And I just have to say, we've already shouted out Shamik Moore for his incredible vocal performance in this. I want to shout out Oscar Isaac too. Like, it's so clear. You hear so many of Oscar Isaac's lines, Miguel O'Hara's lines in the trailers, and I think it's just because he does such an incredible job, and there are still just really amazing, beautiful lines that you don't hear. But one of my favorite lines is when Miguel O'Hara is describing ASM 90, another one of these canon events. He says, a police captain close to Spider-Man dies after saving a kid from fallen rubble in a fight with Spider-Man's arch nemesis. He just like lists off a bunch of details that should be so emotional because they're specific to a particular story. But what he's saying is that, like, yeah, this happens to everybody in one form or another, right? A police captain also have to be close to Spider-Man, has to save a kid from falling rubble in a fight with Spider-Man's arch nemesis. Like, those are 5 things that have to be true for this canon event to work. And like, that's what the canon event is. And I feel like because Oscar has such like a droll, rote memorization delivery of this canon event that is supposed to emotionally motivate like these spider people, I think it just speaks to like such a lack of imagination about what these canon pieces are. Like, it feels criminal to repeat that event happening more than once to people because it is So it pulls all of the impact out of it. Yet you're saying the impact of these moments are incredibly important in order to define Spider-Man. So yeah, that is just a line delivery that cracks me up. It's like, yeah, all of those things have to be true, and that makes it a canon event, and that's gonna bring a Spider-Man to his knees and make him learn something. And he is quintessentially not Spider-Man if he
Yeah,
doesn't experience that,
yeah,
which of course is important to Miles because the captain in his universe is his father. So,
yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, so thank you. Again, it's like it's how they deliver that that says something about it, which I think is really key. So I was saying that good themes are present throughout, and so I'm just going to kind of just try to list these as quickly as I can to kind of go over like how does this theme show up in the story. Of course, it is the key plot point. We also see it in Mumbattan when sorry, I'm totally spacing.
Pavitra.
Pavitra, thank you. Um, uh, his intro, right? He mentions that he doesn't have any tragedy yet. One of the best things is he's like, I'm naturally buff, so I don't work out. I don't want to get too big. But he not doing that is the reason why he doesn't have enough strength to pull up the bus on his own, and the reason why he can't save as a person. So we're going to establishing that like this is a key event that like will put him on the path to bulk up and be ready for any bad thing because he's a really happy-go-lucky Spider-Man compared to everyone else who when they're like, hey, did this happen to you too? Like even Hobie's like, what of it? Like they're all emotionally just like shut down on that front.
Yeah, it feels really important. Pavitra's character, he describes being Spider-Man for 6 months, so that Miles even comments on it. It's
Yes,
not that long,
yes,
and his entire backstory is about how well life is going for him.
yeah,
He doesn't have to work out. He doesn't have to do anything to his hair. He has this beautiful girlfriend, and he loves being Spider-Man. At the end of like right before they blow up Alchemix, he like the spot disappears and he just goes another perfect mission first, and everyone else goes no, don't
right.
say that, because like they Spider-Man having an easy time of it is like not part of their reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's this like right, like that's the sort of idea of the canon. And we see in this way, like he's joyous. And I think there's a certain element of like once the captain is saved by Miles, we see him happy, and it's like, can he? Does that mean he'll be a bad Spider-Man? I think there's a lot to watch in the next film to see how does he, do we see him as now that he's had a good time? Is he less cautious or whatever? Like, does he need to learn from that? And it's tough. I mean, I think we talk about stories and we talk about Western narratives as a sort of thing about like you have to throw your character through the ringer. That's why we attach characters. That's how they grow. But there's a small element of this story that's saying like how much does that involve? What ways can we do that and challenge that? Um,
It makes me wonder, like, Pavitra goes through that moment, that fear that he will either lose his girlfriend, Gayatri, I think her name is,
mhm.
or Inspector Singh, like, and this child. Like he has to choose. And Miles saves Inspector Singh, and he didn't have to choose. Both of those groups of people are safe. And I'm like, you think that that moment where he realized he couldn't do it by himself and he's about to lose all of his spider help in his own universe, like I just wonder, I'm like, is that truly not enough for him to know what he needs to do differently? Does he need to experience the grief and loss of someone beyond the fear of that potentially happening in order for
Mhm.
that belief in his necessary change in behavior to happen? I
Yeah,
don't know. I
yeah,
don't know the answer to that question, and I think that's what the film is bringing up. That
yes,
the film wants you to live in that questioning.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so going this now would kind of tie the theme back into plot. I like to think of now we've Miguel asks this thing and says like you shouldn't exist, you shouldn't be Spider-Man, you're like you've broken this. But what's great is that means that like we get to see the ways in which Miles has created chain reaction across universes. We know with Peter B. Parker, Peter has Mayday because of Miles, because spends time with Miles. He sees a potential when he gets to be a family. He can do that, which is a lot of people. If you go online in the Spider-Man spaces, people are so happy with this representation of Peter B because they've been missing adult parent Peter in the comics for like 30 plus years. Right. In that space in like I don't know if it's the 80s, 90s, like he grew up, he had kids, it brought other newer, richer stories. And then since then, Spider-Man editorial has been like, nah, he's back to college age or teenage, and and things are terrible, and he can't hold a relationship for more than a year, and he can't be happy, and he can't be married. And it's just like it's a damn shame, because we see in Peter be such a compelling character. That's because of Miles, right? Of course, the again, all big plot points tied to this theme. There's the portal that he caused. A lot, people are traveling from world to world. Like Miguel's whole existence is because of that. Because of this happening, Miguel traps Captain Stacy. So, like, in the first movie, Alchemist Collider exists. That event allows for portals. Portals allow for Vulture to go to Gwen's world. Because of that, it means Miguel is present for Gwen's world, which means he traps Captain Stacy, which means Captain Stacy does not arrest Gwen. Whatever fallout that's about to happen there does not happen. This means that by the time Gwen has gone back, her father has a time to think. In his moment, he sticks to his police convictions. When he goes back again, he realizes he might not get another conversation with his daughter, and he listens to her, which we're going to get to. And because of these things, it's all still this like effect after effect after effect coming off of Miles. Suddenly, Gwen sees a different option, because it's all this great chain reaction, and because she sees a different option, she goes to gather people. She's building this team together to challenge Miguel's ideals. So it's just this really cool way that, again, to Shaylee's point about the Beauty and the Beast earlier, like, Miles is set kind of in some of these ways, especially in this area. Like, he is pretty determined to say, I don't believe this is our only option. I believe we can do both. I'll get into some more Miles things in a second. And we watch that chain reaction happening in the background, leading us to Gwen hearing that her father's no longer a police officer. The reason she doesn't go home, the movie does not explicitly state this, which I think it's good because it's trusting its audience. The reason she does not go home is because if she goes home, she'll be present for her father dying, and she does not want that to happen. That is why she's spending time in Hobie's dimensions. That is why she's doing other things. She is terrified to go home. And she's forced in that conversation. She's probably nervous about what's going to happen. And the unthinkable happens. And her father quits, and the universe doesn't unravel, and she realizes there's another chance. And that, I think, is just a great thread to throw us in the next film.
Well, and it opens up her world, right?
Yeah.
When she sees her father quit captain, and the world literally doesn't fall apart in front of her. It leads her to her next conclusion, which she says, it's such a beautiful line. Haley Steinfeld delivers it really perfectly too. She says it to Miles' parents, like, Miles taught me that it's all possible.
Yeah.
And what it means is that, like, she could live. She could fall in love with a Spider-Man, with Miles, and not lose her life. Like, these stakes for Gwen in this movie are life and death.
Yes.
Like, because she knows what she tells us at the beginning of the movie, like, every time this happens to Gwen, she dies. So it could happen to me. It's the reason she keeps Miles at arm's length.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it means she gets to go into the next movie with so many wants, right? I want to prove that Miles is right. I want to save Miles, or like find Miles. I want to like fall in love with I want to open myself and be like into that space, because I trust you are so good at breaking the universe that I trust you, we're going to be okay, kind of thing, or like we'll figure it out. Other just examples, I think that, like, we now have like redefined Miles in this way that I've just referred to as a canon breaker. Like, I don't think Miguel is wrong in saying he's breaking the canon or is risking the canon or is a threat to the canon. I think Miguel is recognizing that and is maybe scared of it. Exactly why we're not sure. I think it's pretty kind of, he gives us one answer, but I don't trust him. But like, this is such a great reestablishment of Miles as a character that, again, we're taking his origins externally from the comics as someone who should not exist, but we have him, and he gets to just live this out. I think it recontextualizes the first film and the spray paint, the no expectations, because he does not want to be limited by what people think of him. His like first entrance, I think, as him, and not as Spider-Man, but as Miles, is to the counselor who says, hey, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And he walks and says, unless you bake 2 cakes. He's not willing to just go with what people tell him. he, says I can do both a few times in the film. Pavitr says at one point I can do both. It's a purposeful echo. It's all specific. We get an incredibly explicit, like there's no way around it. He's at a bakery. He's at a little panderia, and he says, "Hey, your cake message is too long." And she says, "Well, can you write a shorter message?" And he walks out with two cakes. He's not willing to let people tell him what to do, and not in a way that is necessarily like dangerous or malicious or toxic, but as one saying, "Why can't we dream a little bigger?" Um, and what's great is like I keep bringing this cake thing because it's like the movie is trying to tell you cake is important, right? We've told you this line. It means something. We are taking a well-known moniker, we are challenging that moniker. We are showing you this cake scene, and then later on, um, the first cakes don't show out well, right? So there's a little bit of a foreshadowing that maybe he's wrong, right? Like maybe he is kind of risking it. Um, his mother says, "Come back, be back early and bring a cake." But we also see cakes in Gwen's flashback or in the opening when they're at the table. Like one of the quick instances is a birthday party, and it's really tucked away. But I'm willing to like throw down $100 that in Miguel's little recording that he's watching of him and his daughter, or even this other Miguel and that person's daughter, is there something on the face that I'm pretty sure is cake. It's
You're
like,
right. It is cake because his daughter is holding a cupcake.
oh,
You're
she's only a
absolutely
cupcake.
right about it.
I missed
Mhm.
cupcake. Yeah. So like he has cake on his face. Like it is happening there already. Like they are gonna hit us hard in the next movie with cake metaphors. It's gonna be present. If yeah, I can do both for free. It's so good. And it's even challenged in a different way in the movie where he says Spider-Man always catches the bad guy mostly. Like the same sort of he's trying his best to do these things. Um, uh, so yeah, so he is a canon breaker. He exists to do just that. And the thing I caught yesterday, and I want to watch it one more time to be really sure, but I think the most audacious version of this, in that everything is purposeful, it's all storytellers working together. I'm gonna ask the chat because I know we got it looks like two of you here, at least. Uh, do y'all know what the Akira slide is? I'm gonna say I think there's like a 30-second delay on this. Um, And actually, I guess you can say yes or no, and then I'll just start talking about it, and we'll match at the same time. The Akira slide comes from the 1980s film Akira, which is an anime. It is probably marked as like one of the best animated films of all time. Insane budget, insane amount of time that goes into it. Incredible stuff they are doing by hand with like calculators to figure out their angles and their math and all those things. Um, yeah. Oh, Stephanie, I want to hit on that. Yeah. So the Kira slide is this moment in which you have a motorcycle, you have a character on a motorcycle, and they brake and they spin and they rotate and they slide. If that sounds familiar, you've probably seen it. If you were to go right now and just like search on YouTube like Akira slide compilation, like there was one that came out last year that's like every Akira slide in animation over 30 years. It has been in video games, it has been in movies. I feel like I saw it recently where someone like did it with like a horse. Um, let's go ahead. Let's Akira slide. Um, I wish I could probably do like a live stream, but my computer might crash a little bit. So look it up. Take a moment wherever you are, pause it. Akira slide. We'll intercut this when we put this up there. It is like,
We can try having me share it if you want to
yeah, you
give
want to go
me
ahead
a.
and just pull up, see if you can find just one of the compilations. Um, oh yeah, here we go. 3 decades of Akira slide homages.
You want to pop it in chat and I will.
I'll pop it in chat. I'm going to pop it in chat here. Give me a moment. Do, 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 do. Is it the oh yeah, it's exactly like the Wilhelm scream. It's the same sort of thing in that like the Wilhelm scream is uh
Pop it in Zoom chat, do you know?
oh, I put it in the other one, but I'll put it here too. Doo, doo.
Oh, I can.
Um yeah, it is. Oh, cool. I cannot minimize it. Great. I'm not trying to minimize that. It's animators, when they get a chance, they're like, cool, I've got a motorcycle or I've got a bicycle or I've got something I want to
You gotta. Oh, here we go.
give permissions. Like
You've disabled my ability to share. If you want to make me a co-host here.
advanced sharing, all participants. Great.
Perfect.
Go ahead and
All
try
right.
that.
Here we go. Showing off the Akira slide. We might not get audio here, but
Yeah. Also, it's like a yeah.
see this motorcycle that's sliding on its side. It's a bike.
the bike. Somewhere, I mean, I've definitely seen feel like a horse do it. So that like all sorts of shows, it is very much like animators who love animation. There's just a person sliding. Um, yeah,
I can kind of like cut to the end to see if.
Star
Oh,
Wars.
look, there's an animal of some sort. Officer Jenny!
Think Craig of the Creek. Love it. Uh,
Oh, there's a wolf there. Yeah.
is that the new Pokemon? Is that what that was? A felt one. Uh,
Skateboard!
incredible. Um,
There you go.
great. So that is it is like you are an animator, you've got enough budget, you've got enough time, you've got a motorcycle, you want to show off the Akira slide, no way around it. And I saw Jessica Drew with a motorcycle, and I was like, I will get it. We're gonna
Countdown to
put
the
the
Akira
countdown on
slide.
the clock. We are gonna get it. And I thought I saw it the first time, but I wasn't 100% sure. And the second time, I was like, oh, did it maybe do this? And the third viewing, I was like, oh, it absolutely did. But I still gotta watch it one more time because I now know exactly where it is locked in. Chase sequence. They're driving up that like vertical street. They're fighting. Jessica Drew, I think, like jumps at him one point. It's like I think it's like Gwen grabs Spider Woman with a web, throws her forward. She goes in for like a hit or something. She breaks and she goes to break and slide. She starts the animation backwards into traffic, and Miles chases and hits her bike. And we do not get the full Akira slide. It is almost like sacrilegious. Again, I've only seen this in theaters. I will need to like watch it and pause it and replay it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I saw that and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Like they're saying Miles is so explicitly challenging any sense of homage and tradition that he's saying, "Why do we keep doing this damn thing? I know where you're going to be. I'm going to knock you out of it." It is phenomenal. I think when people figure it out, they're either going to love it or going to be real mad about that moment. Um, but yeah, that's I kind of want to wrap our first theme of like Miles as canon breaker and this idea of canon versus fate, or canon fate versus anomaly and free will. At the end of the day, this movie, like the reason, not only is it why do we tell these stories, I think it tells you as an individual, like why do you believe the myths that you do, and can you break out of them? Are there things that you want for yourself that you don't need to follow that protocol? So that's why I think it's a great theme. But I want to kick in to our second one. Do you want to launch the second one? Should I launch it? Or any other thoughts on that before?
No, I think you go into it. I
Okay.
will add a this is yeah, theme is all you, baby.
I do love theme. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I famously hate theme. I never want
No.
to know theme.
No.
So I
I will
just
say
love
this.
hearing you talk about it. So
I will say one of the things for the first movie that I thought could have been stronger was its theme. I think it has a few ideas around anyone can wear the mask, has a few ideas around it's about a leap of faith is a huge piece of that, and a few ideas around this like no expectations, great expectations, like is a piece. And I don't think any of them are rich enough that they show up everywhere in the film. I think they have their moments, right? Like leap of faith, like gets connected to Peter B right as he's about to drop. Like he gets that, like Peter tells Miles that it's about a leap of faith, and Miles gets to tell him like it's leap of faith. You don't know what's going to happen, and like it's how he gets to say goodbye. Like that, I think is one of like the richest moments. But it's not the sort of thing where like scene to scene doesn't show up. It doesn't show up in Kingpin's flashback. It doesn't show up, in every person's world. It's not super present. And it's a thing that I've come to learn in storytelling comes later in the process. It's a thing you get to kind of find or mine. And given just how involved this was on an animation standpoint, like you can see that maybe they started to see places to put it later, but by that time, they're already 5 years into production. They can't they can't do this again. Um, so the other theme here, this one, I mean, this movie I think hits the canon one in 70% of the scenes and is not ever present. The one that I think exists pretty much everywhere. And I picked up on this the first time, and I feel like I told Shaylee, and then you watched it the second time, you go, "Oh my gosh, you were not kidding!" Like throughout the movie, you like
I was
you
like
like
elbow. I would
no,
elbow
it's like, oh,
him
they did it
every
again, they did it
time.
again.
Yeah.
And it's this, it is again, like I said, if your theme is so damn good and you've earned it, you can say it outright. And they don't exactly say it outright. I mean, they kind of do a few times, but they do show it outright. Is at the end of the movie, Peter is reading a book, a parenting book, as as Mayday sleeps, and it is how to get your kids to listen and listen to your kids. It's like a little Dr. Seuss kind of cover, and he's asleep as he's reading it. And
It's
if
it's more like how to get your kids to listen when you talk, and then it answers the question. It says, "Listen so kids will talk," essentially.
yeah,
It's
it's
like
just
it's a little convoluted of a title, but essentially it just says it's implying like you need to listen before you talk, and that's how
yes.
you have your children listen to you.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we take this idea the same. I also think it can be helpful sometimes to present a theme as a question, as you like ask, does this thing do this, right? And so for me, the question framing is like, what happens when you don't listen to others, or what happens when you don't trust others to listen, right? Like that same sort of piece. And I think the movie overall, it's like bad things happen. Like a lot of the stakes are raised in this film because someone is choosing not to listen to someone else. So
Or they're monologuing, or they're choosing to talk instead of
exactly.
listen.
Yes. It's not just listening. It is also like it is also people trying to both push at the same time and not always be willing to have that dialogue or take that in. And so like again, this is one of those things where those of you who are with us live, enjoy this. If you're watching this later, I would say like hear that. Go rewatch the movie with the context of who's listening when and why and how often this comes up, and you'll just start counting and how often it shows up because um, our opening sequence, we have our uh, Gwen's monologuing leads into her playing the drums, and her band says, "Hey, will you tell us what's going on?" And they have a back and forth, and they don't really talk to each other, and they say, "We don't get you." And he's like, "You're right, you don't." She does not find their space to trust them. Then her and her father, when they're in like they are constantly talking over each other in those first scenes, especially when he sees her as Peter. She's trying to say, "You didn't see what happened. You don't know what happened." When they're in her bedroom later, she says, "You don't know what's going on. Why don't you listen to me?" They're like, not every time do they say the word listen, but it comes up a lot. It's just constant crosstalk all the way to her leaving because he is just not listening to her. She says all those pieces, and he wants to arrest her. Um, then we get into Miles in the Spot and their fight. The first interaction, again, it's all cross talk. The Spot is monologuing and says, "Do you know who I am?" He kind of just wants to be taken seriously. He's explaining to the guy why he's robbing him, not because he's like wants to like entice him. He's monologuing as means to like try to connect. He goes, "I can't get a job. I can't do these things. I want like this is the only way I can get money."
Well,
And
and specifically to Miles, Spot says like we created each other, like we
yes,
are intrinsically linked. And Miles' response is to answer the phone to his
yeah,
father, right?
right. He's like Miles is
The
like texting the
text,
entire time. He's
yeah.
like choosing to not engage with this villain, and we watch as that fight gets worse and worse and worse. And then Spot is now our big bad in the next film because we are not talking. Later, Miles I think starts to pick up that he's messed up a little bit. First of all, I will say that like there's Miles and Gwen have a lot of like interactions that pass each other. Miles and his parents, I mean, the whole thing on the rooftop where they're shouting at him and so why don't you guys listen? And they offer him the chance to, but he's not confident to. So like there's the whole piece about his identity and should he share his identity is all entrenched in
Well,
trust and
yeah.
listening.
Well, and that party scene where they're mad at him for not showing up, it is all lecture, right? They
Mhm.
aren't like, Miles, why are you late? It's, Miles, you shouldn't have been late. And the thing that Rio says over and over and over again is Oya, right? Like, listen to me.
Mm,
And she
mm.
is talking to him, talking to him, talking to him. Like they will, and he says, they're like, "Oh, is this the reason you were late? Is this the reason you're late? Is this the reason you're late? Why don't you explain?" And he says, "Sounds like you're explaining it for me."
Yeah.
And then finally, when we get to the moment where Jeff is like, "Yeah, you're right. I have no idea what's happening to you. Why don't you just tell me the thing you need to tell me?" Now, all of a sudden, like they've finished their huge monologue, and all of the party's eyes are on Miles, and they haven't done the thing that the book asks them to do, which is to listen so kids will talk. They've talked first.
And it's the sort of piece where it's like, if that conversation had happened in their household, right? Maybe he would have said something, right?
Yeah.
And then it just changes the entire trajectory of the film. The film does not happen as it does, but it doesn't.
What's
We choose our setting, we choose our stakes, we place it in these other ways because the next time he gets a chance to tell them, where it's quiet, where he has a one-on-one with his mother, where he could trust her and tell her, he's been told by Gwen, "Do not tell your parents." And so that prevents him from speaking up that next time. It's just again, she's the other side of like you can't trust them.
there's another really brilliant moment too. It's before he kind of runs away with Glenn. Is uh he he runs away with Gwen, and his parents come into his room because I think they realized that was not the conversation we wanted to have. Miles has great parents, right? So they're like, that wasn't good. That was not the ideal situation. Rio opens the door to his bedroom and she goes, Miles, your father is ready to listen now. And he's not there,
He's gone.
right? Like when they're finally ready to listen, they've missed their opportunity and he's gone,
Yeah. Yep.
which changes Rio's behavior. That is why she's able to go to the tower, and she gives him space. I love the narrative for taking the time. Like she was like, "Will you tell me?" And she says in Spanish, "There are no lies between us." And and she gives him, and the movie lives in all of the space for him to really contemplate it. The thing happens that you said, Daniels, he listened to Gwen and Gwen said, don't do it. And so he says, I am, and you think he might be about to say that he's Spider-Man, but instead he says, I'm sorry, I was late.
Yep.
And she knows that's not what he meant to say, but like she is now in this mode of like listening, right? Yep. So she was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And that's where she gives him the freedom,
Yes.
You're ungrounded for tonight.
And I think what's great is he gets that freedom and it shifts him as he goes on the next spot as Inspired Society. Because when he runs into Miguel, he's super excited to be there. He's super happy to be there. And like one of the first things he says to Miguel is, I've got some new ideas about how to capture the spot. I think he just wants to be heard. Right? Like he explicitly says to Miguel, we need to talk to the spot. The spot is stressing, trying to figure these things out. He's not being listened to. The reason why like Miles maybe doesn't really do that super well in the Collider sequence is because he's stressing about Hobie and Gwen. Like his brain is not in the place to process that and be like, yo, Spot. Like he tries to. I mean, they're attached on the web and it's just too late by then. Where it's like, we're trying to take you seriously. We don't think you're funny. Tell us what's going on. And Spot's like, you'll find out. And goes. And that's I think another thread of this is like, that's the risk. Is like if you don't take time to like listen and hear people out early, sometimes they're going to be too far gone. And even at that point, Miles still is championing him for Miguel, and Miguel's response is to throw an empanada at him. Like he does not listen, and he's just like, you listen. Like here's what I'm trying to do, and just pushes this all the way back at them.
What's also brilliant in that scene too is the walk up to Miguel is Miles listening to Hobie. Hobie is essentially, this is where Hobie gives us his speech about why do you want to be here? Don't you want your independence? Why do you want to be a part of this? And then the last thing he says is like, just make sure, he's telling Miles to listen, make sure you know the war before you enlist. Yeah. And that's why I think there's such an instant connection when Miles does get the full scope of the problem there, why he is so quick to move on. You know what I mean?
So this is our big theme for this film, and then we see it start to resolve towards the end, right? We talk about how once Miles is betrayed by Gwen, and he leaves, like he disconnects the web from Gwen at one point, and then they really don't have a moment again in that fight. The next time he sees Rio, he's willing to tell her. Yeah. That was like the one thing that was keeping him back was Gwen saying, don't do it. And he's like, I'm sick of people telling me what to do. I mean, he says as much. And he goes to tell her. And of course, by then it's too late. It's not his Rio. It's not, he doesn't get to share that sort of thing. And meanwhile, his parents are also growing. They're doing incredible things. Maybe we should grow a little. Right. Officer Davis, or Officer Morales, gets the chance to like listen to some through Spider-Man, but again, there's still this wall between them. Like, this is what I'm saying by good theme, is like it is ever present. I don't know if this will show up in the next movie as concretely. I think we might get some echoes of it. I don't know if it's the full theme of both films. It's definitely the theme of this film, because of how, again, like I said, it resolves in Gwen's father listening to her. I mean, his change of heart is, I quit halfway through your speech.
Yeah.
Right. Like this is a key piece. You were saying yesterday that Mary Jane gets to be the moral center of both these films. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get to that in just a second because you just mentioned this, but this is my point, so I just want to elucidate it a little bit more. Jeff's moment to Rio is like, maybe we need to grow a little. They're acknowledging the places in which they need to listen, and he's listening. There are moments where he is listening. There's one of my favorite moments, and they linger on it in the setup so you understand it at the payoff. But when um, Jeff is explaining to Spider-Man, like, I don't understand my kid. I like don't know what to do about it. Um, Miles tells him, as an objective observer with absolutely no skin in the game, like maybe you should let him spread his wings. And then he like
Mm,
you get this visual cue of him like opening up his body, like spreading his wings, and the movie lingers on it.
yeah,
They like show you at the close up, they pull back, they show you this like really beautiful uh
it's like a fake ocean. It's
yeah,
dark. Yeah.
it's the reflection of the clouds from the sky on the glass of the building that they're next to. So it's like he's flying, right? Um, and they linger on it so that when you get to the moment where Rio and Jeff are talking at the end of the movie about what are they supposed to do, he literally parrots it back. Like Jeff
Mhm.
says, I think we need to let him spread his wings, man. And they show him from the front spreading his wings, and then they take a moment again to go behind him and see him spreading his wings. And you even hear Rio go, man, like why did he phrase it that way? It's because he's listened to Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
he's just saying exactly what he said. And I just think it's it's kind of the power of Miles. We joked about it earlier, but Miles has this really great line that is totally freaking true about how he's just like a really emotionally intelligent guy.
Mm,
And we get this really beautiful joke at the beginning of the movie where he tells his dad, "Men of your generation don't talk about your feelings."
yeah.
And I think once you get to the end of the movie, you see how big of an indictment that is to Miguel, right?
Yes.
Because Miguel will not listen, and he will not. I think you mentioned this, Daniel. He does not describe his feelings. We see him extremely broody. What you said earlier, Stephanie, about Batman syndrome, we just see him like totally stoic, like
Hmm.
just almost kingpin like looking at memories and
Mm,
just
hmm.
not expressing his emotion. Um, but back to MJ. I think just these movies have such respect for Mary Jane, which I truly love. But in the first movie, she's giving Peter's eulogy, right? And she says, now that Peter's gone, like we all need to take up the mantle. Like we all need to protect and care for one another. We all need to wear the mask, and I'm counting on you. And you have that really funny moment where Miles in the crowd, he's wearing his Spider-Man costume that he's bought. And he goes, she's counting on me. And then you have this man lean next to him and is like, well, I think it's like more of a metaphor. Like she's not actually. And he just kind of like rolls his eyes, and we roll our eyes with Miles too, because we believe MJ and we believe Miles. Like MJ says, it's on all of us now, and that's the moral here. And she gives us the moral in this story too. I think it kind of connects more to what you were talking about in terms of canon breaker.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's the scene towards the end of the movie where Peter B. Parker has just put Mayday down to sleep, and he says, "Do you think I'm gonna be good at this?" And she kind of jokingly tells him, "You're asking me that now? Like we've already had this kid." But she says, "There's no playbook to raising someone like her, just like there's no playbook to being someone like you." And to me, that's the beautiful thesis of this story is I kind of think you will know which way the artists are leaning in the question that they're
Mhm.
raising. And so for me, my big belief is I believe in Miles just like Gwen
Yeah.
does. Like I believe that this canon stuff is kind of bullshit. I think it's the playbook to be Spider-Man, but I believe MJ when she says there's no playbook to be
Hmm.
Spider-Man, to be someone like you.
Hmm.
And the thing that she says that really like makes it clear that this is a two-parter, right? Is she says you just have to be willing to change your moves or adjust at halftime. And it's
Yeah.
literally now we're approaching halftime in the movie because we're at the end of the movie and we're about to get the
Yeah.
announcement of part two.
It's such a fun line that like the just at halftime, knowing we're 10, 15 minutes out from closing this. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that kind of wraps up our section on theme. Stephanie, you had the question about do we think they knew it was going to be a trilogy when they're making the first one? It's one of those things where they didn't know it was gonna be a trilogy. They were making a second film. They got greenlit for a second film, which then was split into a trilogy. Um, but I do go back and forth on what seeds do they give themselves versus do they know what the overall thing was going to be? Because I think they do a really good job of finding pieces in the first film to build off of. Like when they wrote the guy being hit in the head with a bagel, no way in hell they're like, this guy's gonna become a villain later on. But later
Right.
on, when they said we want to have this villain, he's gonna have these purpose and these sort of things and this sort of background, they go, oh, should be a scientist at Alchemix. They go, oh hell yeah, I know exactly who we pick. We need someone who does not matter, but also everyone will remember. And so
To
like that's like
quote the spot, the holes are the answer. His holes are his answer, and it's the hole in the bagel,
it's great.
right?
It's perfect. Um, there's been people online, of course, making the link to Everything Everywhere All at Once, also being bagel
Oh
related.
yeah,
And there's like a
yes.
billboard also in this movie that's like all the something all the time. There's like everything like a fake movie poster similar to there was for the other in the first film. So it's like it's definitely one of those things where I think they were really smart at choosing what to pick up and move here. When we get into our next section, the juiciest of sections.
This is the real fun
This is the
section for
this is the
us.
thank you for sticking around for 2.5 hours. So we can get into the nitty gritty, the things you get to tell your friends and be like, hell, check this out section. Um, we'll see, I think, some answers of they probably didn't have all of it plotted, but they found their things to connect here. So I think it is time, Shalee, to
Yes.
talk about the Prowler.
As you
And
can
we're
see, I've prepared to talk about the Prowler.
perfect. And we're not talking about Aaron. And
Oh,
we're not talking about Miles from Earth 42.
oh,
And
oh,
we're not
okay.
talking about Donald Glover. Although I will say that showing Donald Glover is not only a dope cameo that we are all really happy for, it is a craft choice to prime in the back of your head that there's going to be more Prowlers, that there are also Prowlers in different universes, and thinking about that, and to prime the expectation the Prowler has variants. Shalee, who are
So,
we
so
talking
if
about?
we're not talking about Aaron, and if we're not talking about Miles 42 or Donald Glover, then and we're still talking about Prowler,
Yeah,
I have to believe that we're talking about Miguel O'Hara then.
yeah, we are.
Yeah, I got this vibe on the you get it immediately, and I've been looking at Twitter about it, but the sound cue that you get that introduces Miguel O'Hara to this universe has just clear echoes and immediate emotional connection and resonance with the Prowler theme in the first movie. So for me, I think we are going to get a reveal in the next movie that Miguel O'Hara is a Prowler. Because I don't believe in sticking to canon. I don't think that that makes him not a Spider-Man. I actually think that anybody can be Spider-Man. Um, but I think there are enough clues there to illustrate that Miguel O'Hara is a Prowler. And for me, the things that I picked up on are the music. That was the very first one, and I think the connections that a ton of people are making is the music. Sounds so similar to Prowler's music, to Aaron's music in the first. You have this iconic animation in the first movie where Aaron clicks his claws with his hands. He does like a crunch with his hands to illustrate the Prowler claws. And literally, Miguel does the same thing. He crawls up that moon train with his claws, and he does the iconic Prowler from the first film, the like crunch of his hands. And then for me, because Spider-Man is like a little bit about comedy too, like when Gwen sees him, she names him as a cat, right? Not as a spider. She calls him Blue Panther, iconically calls him Dark Garfield, right? So you have that. And then for me, just the way choreographically he's moving, he like scurries up that bullet train as opposing to like crawling. It's like a
Mm.
clawing in. We see his teeth. We know he's been termed as a vampire. But as he goes to bite the vulture, it's not just the front vampire teeth. He has bottom fangs too, which to me looks like a cat. Um, and yeah, those are for me. That's when I turned it in after the second viewing, and I was like, I think Miguel O'Hara is Prowler.
Yeah. Yeah,
Some
and that's
universe's Prowler.
and this is again, this is why we're saving this for the end, as juicy the opening as it would be, is because like we wanted to talk about this after we talked about all the ways they're seeding plot, all the ways they're seeding theme, all the ways they're seeing art style, and telling you. Because again, why we did this video is we saw people online being like, "Wow, it's man, Miguel gives me like Prowler vibes. He's a good villain like the Prowler. Like his music's really intense too, and oh, he's good. But people aren't trusting that full leap. They aren't trusting themselves to make that full leap. It's like, no, keep going. Like you are sensing that for a reason, and it's because the artists, they want you to guess. They want you with like whenever Miles figures it out, or whoever figures it out on the next film, they want you to be there right there with them, because they then it knows that they did a good job teaching you how to watch their own movie. And so like you said that viewing number 2, and we sat down for viewing number 3, and it is one of those things you're just like, oh, absolutely. So like we're gonna just dig into all the other things. I think you labeled some really great ones at the top. The
I also feel the
oh,
need
yeah,
for you to point out that Clementine is the cat that keeps walking back and forth on your screen.
a
That's
real
why we keep
Prowler,
seeing a
a
stripy little
blurry.
tail back and forth. So
She's
keep going
excited
though.
about the Prowler.
She loves the
So
Prowler.
first of all, backstory, right? We don't actually get his full backstory. We get one version that he tells
Miguel's.
us. Yeah.
Mhm.
We get one version that he tells us. We see his comic. Now, I think there's something really critical here that I'm just now piecing together as I'm saying this. We get like 2 panels of his comic before Gwen interrupts him and asks him about his watch, which is good writing because she has a want in that scene, which is great. So he says like, I lead an elite task force, and it shows the first cover of the Prowler from the comics. Like a lot of the other ones show first introductory covers of those characters. And later we see a bit of a flashback, but it's in a different art style than the comic panels are. Whereas a lot of times those are 1-to-1. A lot of times the comic will match their world, but his world is done in a really cool, like there's an artist that's mimicking him. I can't remember who it is, but it's like all black, and then it has like really like stark pops of color and like really moody, sort of like almost detective style in some ways, a little like noir-ish. It's not the same as his comic. So there's an implication that he's maybe not telling the full truth. It's clear that he's lying about something. I mean, something happens to that
The
universe.
most,
He
yeah,
maybe
the
believes
most
it. Yeah.
origin story that we get for him is when he goes into the other universe, which he admits to us, right? He goes into the universe where the version of him who dies has a family.
Yes.
That is the origin we get. We do not know his original origin.
We don't know his original origin. Key to that story is he like kicks it to Peter B, who clearly was there to help him save the world. Maybe. It's not Peter's world as far as we know. I mean, for all we know, the Aunt May scene could be them hanging on someone else's universe. That'd be wild. But I'm just lying to myself now.
Possibilities.
Oh, but they show Aunt May moving, and they show us that same house later.
But Aunt May moves to Florida.
Aunt May moves to Florida. Okay, this is where
And
you
then
start.
Aunt May moves to Florida in Peter's world. And then I'm pretty sure Peter and MJ live in Aunt May's house. Because we know Peter has lost Aunt May. Peter B has lost Aunt May.
All right, crackpot theory.
Okay,
That's not the best way to frame that. Wild theory in the sort of
wild hair theory.
Well, we're gonna get back on the 100% Miguel is a Prowler. The exact details TBD.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm still trying to figure out why he looks at Peter and goes like, "What do you think, Peter? Like, what happens here? What's the reasoning behind this? Yada yada. Like, whatever that is. Like, Peter's there. Peter B is at the world falling apart, and he goes, "Isn't that right, Peter?" And he goes, "Yeah."
The world with his daughter that falls apart.
And
this
now
is Miguel's whole character justification that you can't have anomalies in worlds because anomalies make worlds collapse.
What if it's possible that Miguel has gone to Peter B's world?
Okay.
And that world collapses. And Miguel gets Peter B and MJ and maybe not Aunt May out, and they are living in someone else's place.
Aunt May is already dead.
Sure, right. So is there a small chance in which the world that they live in is somewhere else? Who knows?
I think,
and specifically, we know that Aunt May has moved. So like, what's the how? No, it's not. And the more I say this, the less Unless he's not
Okay,
trying to be
let's.
Spider-Man anyway. All right, we're gonna get back on track. Sorry,
I
this is
think
the fun part.
that's interesting. You know, somebody can come back later if you're wildly right and be
If
like,
I'm
"This
wildly
man
right, we're
knew."
gonna I'll be like, I told you so.
But keep
He's been
going.
hanging out in Miles's universe and just been avoiding him for like a few years. Rude. But it's a good
Interesting.
way. It's a good way for him to not be Spider-Man. A good way for him just to raise a kid instead because he can trust that Spider-Man's gonna be taking care of him in that space.
Moving on.
Moving on. Sorry, we don't know Prowler's background. Sorry, Miguel's background. But here are the other
He
things.
was cheeky, but
No, that one was. Like honestly, I've almost said Prowler a few times, so I just have now linked the two. Um, I'm a good guy is one of the things that Prowler says right before he goes full teeth. Helicopter shines on him. He chooses not to eat the vulture. He says, "I'm a good
Miguel
guy." Miguel
Miguel
says,
says
"Yeah,
that. Yep.
I'm a good guy." Later,
He's like, you don't. The helicopter person's like, you don't look like a
you
good
don't look like a
guy.
good guy.
Guess you'll have
Later,
to trust me, is what he says.
perfect. Guess you have to trust me. Gwen and Peter are swinging through the city. Oh, you'd love, or like you, Miguel's so cool. He's this ninja vampire Spider-Man, and then he's a good guy,
But he's
and
also a good
he's
guy.
also a good guy. And Miles is a vampire good guy. I'd pay to see that. And then Gwen to the room of Spider Peel says we're supposed to be the good guys, and Miguel, adamant to a silent audience, says, "We are the good guys.
We are. We are.
We are." Like he double hits it, and they're
There's
all like,
a there's a sorry.
"Please."
There's a this is a theater technique, a common direction I give actors, but we talk about it in terms of Shakespearean acting too. Is that if you repeat a line, it has to mean something different the second
Yes.
time when you say it, right? So in that we are scene, for me, if I'm interpreting this theory, we get the we are, which is the direct answer to Gwen. We are, as in we, all of the spider people are the good guys. And then for me, that second we are is justification to self. I am. I think it's an implied I am a good guy. We are. I am.
And again,
We
nothing
are.
is done without purpose. So
Yeah.
the last time we hear the refrain of "You're a good guy" or "good guy" is Miles to Uncle Aaron in Earth 42. He says, "My uncle was the Prowler. He did crimes, but he was a good guy." And then
He was
Uncle
trying
Aaron,
to be a good
he's trying to
guy.
be a good
Yeah.
guy, and Uncle Aaron like laughs at that.
No, he's like he
Uh,
was trying to be a good guy, and then because Miles is fighting for his life right now and fighting to get back to his dad, he goes, "I think you can do that too. You could be a good guy," and that is what makes Aaron laugh.
and so we again are linking this phrasing of good guy to Miguel and to the Prowler and putting them together and putting them in conversation with one another. It's huge.
Yeah.
The other ones, I'm gonna stream this, and I might lose my camera, but we'll see about coming back here in a moment. Um, is I'm looking at these costume designs, and I was like, I feel like there's some echoing in the design of um, Prowler and design of uh, excuse me, of Miguel. And let me go ahead and stream my screen. What's gonna be fun here is Stephanie was in my comics class and watched my camera broke every time, so is fully prepared for this to happen. So I went and pulled some images. There we go. Um, I went and pulled some images of uh, Miguel and Spider-Man 2099, and the first two are from comics. The first one is that like initial cover of him. The other one's an interior, trying to get like a good. It's the spider. Good artists are always showing the spider people in like fun poses. So having them just straight up like standing tall, I was honestly looking for action figures to find a really good example. And it's very clear that like they're always going to reimagine his design, but it's the traits that are like stand out to me are like the spider on the chest is a skull. That we get to see that very clearly. Should be able to do a little. Yeah, there goes the camera. But y'all can still hear me.
Yep.
Cool. You can see my little laser pointer, hopefully.
Yep.
So with the skull, there's these little like weird stretchy things that are constantly present, and these like the spider legs off of the eyes. Like those are some key pieces on top of like the blue, the webbing, the claws on the side. When he appears at the end of Into the Spider-Verse, he's pretty close to that first version. We get two good shots of it here. He's got these little lines. He's got the full skull spider, and he's got these little notches. Not as big, but pretty clear. To kind of line up to the other piece. This is to the question of did they plan this out? I don't really wholly know, but I think as they decided to prep him for the next movie, they spent a lot more time on his costume. And now we get to see, well, what has changed? We still get the general shape of the eye, but it is missing these little like leg bumps. And there's a very like clear protrusion off the top, which is brand new. His design drops the like weird side things. It expands the skull outwards. It shrinks it a little bit, and it takes these points and makes two long ones on the side versus these original versions, which have four even points, or in this case, like two in the middle. Like it takes this choice to draw them down in this way. Keep all this in mind. All right, this brings us to the Prowler. Now, I had to look at some toys for this, and again, some early issues. This first one is the toy from the first movie, and kind of what he looks like. And I just take a note of this eye shape. Again, this little hook at the top here. This shows up. This is gonna be a fun part. This shows up in Fortnite. Comes out in April 2022, which is directly lines up with when the movie was first set to release. So my guess is that Fortnite, which plans everything out, they've said like 2 or 3 years in advance, and it has these massive deals with Marvel and Disney. Says, great, your movie's going to drop, and we're going to put Prowler in the Battle Pass, and they're synced up this way. And so this Prowler was maybe designed in tandem with art that's coming out of the studio. We know Prowler's dead in the first movie. Does not look one to one. It's kind of a mix between this look, the comics look, what comes out of the PlayStation
I
game.
Yeah, I love this second comic book because I understand the iconography of the Prowler in this Fortnite skin.
Yeah,
Actually, you can see the
you
cat
could
a
see
little
the
bit more.
cat. That's a big thing. This is like the old Prowler logo, which like maybe is something. You see this a lot in the older comics. There's a very defined fang and eyes look that's going on here, right? Also, this like little line is kind of on the outside versus like still kind of matching the overall shape of the previous Prowler. And then this takes us to, again, huge spoilers, our new Prowler's logo. And I'll show you the mask in a second. So like we can see this logo evolve between these a little bit, and this is a decided shape. This not only shows up in this way, I think like when Aaron walks in the door at one point, like flashes. We see this
Yeah,
logo like flash 2 or 3 times.
there's some
Uh,
big setup with this logo
they
that they're doing.
want you to pay attention to it. They
Mhm.
want this logo to be like, this iconography is key. Additionally, just to kind of lend further credence that this is a Spider-Verse inspired character, is Prowler comes out in Fortnite in April 2022. The movie was adjusted to be released instead of April into October, when they split into 2 movies. Gwen drops the Battle Pass at the same time, and now the movie finally launched. We have Miles and Miguel drop. Miles's files have been in the game actually for a really long time. People have like had a file type or a file name for what his skin was going to be, going back I think to even like the Prowler. So it's clear that like some of these designs were established or set at some point. So we can put these together. These are the masks. Here's where I want to say, let's see what existed previously. What's our canon outside of it? And how do our character designers come together if they're saying, hey, we want to establish these two characters to be the same? We've now given Miguel this little hook that existed on the Prowler. Not only that, we've made it more prominent on our new Prowler. It's a very decidedly like a concrete hook shape. And we've shifted this little point from the outside of the Prowler's mask to the inside of the eye, which matches up with the Prowler and it's more prominent here. These are not one to one, but they sure do look like the same shapes. And then we go ahead and we take that same logo and we can map it pretty closely to the broad shoulder pattern. You can even take this line
Oh,
and draw it along the top. When I was first looking for this, I was kind of seeing it inside the smaller spider, but as I kind of panned back, I'm like, no, I think it's this bigger look. Right? We
yeah.
can reinterpret this whole image, maybe even this like curl or this cowl piece here, into like these fangs again, into this big like beastly mouthly thing. So like we are getting again across the board this sense, and hopefully I'm gonna be able to get my right video up here. Across the board, the sense of like these logos are the same. Like we have visually designed these characters to look one to one.
For me, this is enough. This is plenty of clues for me to be like, Miguel somewhere, somehow identified with the Prowler as a moniker, as an identity, right? Uh, this there's so much here that, as Daniel said, like this could potentially be a red herring meant to throw us, which like that is a fully integrated red herring if that's the truth. But there you go. That's our plot insurance. Another thing that I want to say here is that like to me, the one thing that I will say is like I do believe that Miguel knows what he's doing and thinks that he's right. Um, Oh, wait a second. I just want to take. Oh, yeah, good. I'm still on the chat, even though you're dark. Um, I think Miguel truly believes that if we don't stick to canon events, then the world will unravel as we know it. Like he saw a world unravel, and I think he's attributed that to his mistakes, and he's holding a lot of pressure for it. I in no universe do I believe that like because I think that Miguel is the prowler, I think that he is a bad guy, right? So I love all this talk about being a good guy. I think Miguel truly believes that he's a good guy. And for me, as someone like who's been to therapy, thank you very much. I think Miguel is in deep panic because I think um, he truly believes that like the world will unravel and that he is the only person holding it together. Uh, so um, so yeah, I think the man's in deep panic and he's acting according to an extreme amount of urgency to do what he thinks is right. He doesn't take a moment to listen. He doesn't take time to slow down yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's room for Miguel to learn this lesson in the next movie, and I that's why I love Miguel as a potential prowler because he feels like a perfect foil to Aaron's prowler in terms of their relationships with Miles. Because what is the one thing that Aaron is for Miles in the first movie? He is the person who will listen to Miles. He we even have a flashback in this movie to a scene that happens in the first movie where Miles is like putting the no expectations uh, graffiti on the wall, his art, and Aaron looks at it and is like, I see what you're trying to do here. He understands Miles. He listens to Miles talk about Gwen when Gwen is interested, or when he is interested in Gwen. Like Aaron's whole character, even while he's the prowler, is to listen to Miles, and that is what Miles is missing in this
Yeah.
movie. He's missing his uncle and he's missing the person who will listen to him.
Yeah.
So for me, as someone who believes in Miguel O'Hara and believes in his, I don't know, ability to supersede this antagonist line, like I think his connections to the Prowler actually give stronger evidence that Miguel is acting in good faith.
Yes.
Because like I think there is an eventual world in the third installment where he does listen to Miles, and Miles with Miles anything is possible, and I think
Yep.
Miles will shift his attitude. But just in case you don't believe us, I do want to throw it to Daniel for one little like
This was
nail in the coffin in this theory.
we wrote all of this yesterday, like bullet points, whatever, and we're like, oh, we're gonna lead to the Prowler because the Prowler is really the juicy part, right? Like that's what we can look at this movie and say, without a doubt, or we are honestly gonna just eat these words, and we never said this, but without a doubt, Miguel is like a Prowler adjacent, has some sort of connection with that in his world or another world. Those links are there, and at the very least, thematically, they want us to think of them as the same, and I think get everything out of this conversation that we do.
Yeah.
But I was like sitting and we wrote it all, and then I like had a thought run past my head, and I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!" Um, if you need any more proof, the first thing that Miles says to Miguel, he walks into the room and he shouts up, "Que tal, tío? What's up, uncle?" It is a joke. He leans over to Gwen. He says, "I speak Spanish too." It is not a mistake. Without realizing it, without saying it, his introduction, his view of Miguel is, "Hey, this guy's like my uncle,"
Yeah.
and it's so juicy.
Yeah. And
I
like absolutely like uncles and aunts, they're not only big in the Spider-Man universe, but they're culturally big as like
mm-hmm,
ways to describe like adult people in your family who are important.
mm-hmm,
But maybe not like blood related. But like there's just too much here for Kate Paltio not to have the amount of weight that it has.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, beautiful.
Um, I think this is good, and I think you actually set us up really well to do this. This is where we move from these are things we feel to be true to okay, what else can we look ahead? What comes next? Right, we have a giant cliffhanger. I will say the first time I saw the end of this movie, I was kind of nervous about a few things. I was like, I don't know how they're going to resolve all these threads. Specifically, I saw Miles 42, Miles Prowler, I saw Uncle Aaron, and I was like, I don't like the coding that we get of these characters. Because my gut expectation was a little bit negative, to be honest. I was like, I don't know. Like I'm a little worried. Um, Rewatching it a few times back, rewatching it for the theme a few times back, I've got nothing but hope for some solid scenes in Earth 42 universe. And Shalee, I feel like you are the one who got picked up on this again, this link of listening and Uncle Aaron. Do you want to just
Yeah.
kind of talk through how your reading of that final scene?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like Uncle Aaron is who Miles is missing in this movie. Is like the only person who listens to him. And as soon as Miles drops into Earth 42, the dramatic reveal is that in this universe, Aaron is alive. And we, let me see. Uh, and what I think is great is that are, I'm wondering how far you want me to get into this. Like, do you want me to talk about my questions about the universe, or do you want me only to talk about the reveal?
Oh, the reveal, and I think that your predictions for what are they doing? I guess what are they doing in that scene? Like
Yeah.
what's the yeah.
So I guess I'm just gonna go into this and you dive in. Um, so for me, uh, one of the first things that once they get away from Rio that Aaron says to our Miles is like security closes at 6. That's when we get in, right? And Miles doesn't quite understand what he's hearing. So he's like, "Yeah, I that's what I'm hearing you say." Like he's hedging bets here. And to me, like Aaron is doing what he's doing and he's listening. I think he picks Miles, our Miles, as like not his Miles immediately, right? He even clocks immediately, hey, you took your braids out. And then I think from there he's testing him. And as we get to the roof scene, we really see Miles like looking around. And that is when like Miles is like, wow, this world is completely different. This is what a world without Spider-Man looks like. If you look at Aaron, Aaron is watching Miles the entire time. And so then for me, like my big predictions about Earth 42 is that I am getting the feel that Miles 42 and Aaron 42 are multiverse savvy. They seem to have a plan for alternate Miles. Whereas in the first movie, when you have different spider people show up, they have a spider sense and are immediately like, you're just like me in like a surprising way. Whereas to me, Miles 42 and Aaron 42 do not seem that surprised. Even more so, they seem to have a plan for an alternative Miles. And that comes down to like the Miles is listening, or that Aaron is listening, and he's testing our Miles, and our Miles kind of fails to test. And then we get another really lovely line from Miles 42, where our Miles is saying, "You have to let me go, or else our dad's gonna die." And Miles 42 goes, "Your dad." He instantly has an understanding of these that there's different universes. You know what I mean? Like he's never like, "Oh my god, someone who looks like me is in
Mhm,
this universe. What are we gonna do?" He seems to know exactly what he plans to do.
mhm.
The moment he sees him.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say the thing you said to me yesterday too is like why I kind of have trust in these two characters that like they might have some edge to them, right? They might not do things the way we expect them to. You know, this Miles is is the kind of guy who intimidates more than our Miles does.
Yeah,
But because they are listening, and this movie
yeah.
teaches us that people who listen are going to do the right thing or are going to have like things work out for them. I mean, it could go the other way, but I think because they're listening, we kind of trust them that they understand their world better than most people do. They are, Uncle Aaron isn't talking over him. Miles is talking, and Uncle Aaron listens, and he says a few things back, and he puts on some music. And
And
your other
you,
line, like that, like your line you pointed out is like when Miles Prowler, Miles 42 says, "Now why would I do that?"
Yeah,
it
because
reads as like
our
a
Miles says you have to let me go, and Miles 42 says, now why would I do that? Yes, right. It does have that level of intimidation.
Mhm. But the scene kind of ends there. Like that is the last line, I'm pretty sure, right? It's like, now why would I do that? And you're going, oh no, why would he? No, that's still a question.
It's a question.
He's leading with the intimidation factor of I'll mess you up. Why would I care about you? But he's also asking like, keep talking, keep
Yeah,
talking. What
tell
else can we
me.
get out of you? Tell me. So yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely think that like those two are gonna be great. Um, yeah, maybe Bagel Guy knew Proud Aaron. So yeah, so going back to that first Easter egg of we see Miles 42 in that flashback into like a lab or like a classroom. Like if he's around that spider, he's working at Alchemex, right?
yeah,
We know that Miles is like an incredibly like intelligent, competitive, and like creative person. So it makes complete sense that he's working in that lab. He's like at an internship or whatever, watches that spider disappear, and he investigates the hell out of that. Like there's a chance that he sees in other universes and maybe understands that this spider was meant for him and was taken from him. And maybe this
or
like or
or something from my dimension is gone, and
yes,
where did it go, right?
yes,
I'm a big believer because we see Miles working at Alchemex. Like, my prediction, and I'm willing to eat words here, is that like I don't think Prowler in this universe is necessarily a legacy hero, which means that I don't necessarily believe that Uncle Aaron is the original Prowler in Earth
mm,
42. I think there's a good chance that Miles might be the first,
yeah,
because like Miles is a super genius and he will have access to Alchemix tech, right?
mm-hmm.
And access to like learn and be qualified to be there in the building. And so then I think that brings us, I'm just going to keep going down. Is that cool?
Yeah. Please, as I say, we're starting to wrap this up. Let's go. Let's bring this
Yeah.
home.
Daniel and I were talking back and forth about this because we were talking about some of the ways that they're coding, especially using a tool of like intimidation, of like, it's enough to make you question, you know, implications of violence, right? And I was just thinking, I was like, I don't necessarily think that Prowler and Aaron 42 in this universe are bad guys.
No.
I think we're playing with some version of expectation here,
Yeah.
because you have Miles be like, the Prowler of my universe wanted to be a good guy, like you could be a good guy. And then we get a little giggle from Aaron. And I think there is like a totally legitimate reading for Aaron to be like, what do you mean I could be a good guy? I am the good guy, right?
Yeah.
And Daniel, you mentioned this thing about
Oh,
Spot.
there's a line earlier where the Spot says, "I'm like Robin Hood, but I'm stealing for myself." When he's talking about the ATM machine, and we watch Aaron put money on the table for Rio, and like we are all like we know Aaron's history or what we presume to be Aaron's history. We assume that this money is not like earned legally, but at the end of the day, she's a single mother working extra shifts, and he's just there whose uh, husband was killed. He's just there to help put food on the table, right? Like we don't know the context of these people are in, and I think we are again taking this broader theme of like canon and challenging our expectations to be like we look at these two characters who are purposely coded to be that edgier character, right? Like we Shamik Moore, and like again, someone who uh is Latina, is Mexican. I heard the accent come out stronger, and my first gut was like, I don't like that because I'm seeing someone who reads more criminal having this accent, and I was like, I'm nervous about what they're presenting from us. And on the second watch, I go, oh, I'm an idiot. They want me to be nervous, and they want to eventually pull the rug out from me on that and say, why did you think that?
Yeah.
What is your you assumed that these people were worse because of XYZ thing, but that's completely your read. And so it is,
The
I think
thing the thing we have to remember in this universe is that there is no Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, yeah,
So if there is no Spider-Man, then you don't have to believe that Prowler is existing in opposition to good if you're like Spider-Man is good. If there is no and I'm not saying there's no good in this universe. I'm saying that like Prowler could be anybody. Anything is possible, right?
yeah,
With Miles, anything is possible. So for me, like there is so much good text here to say that like this Prowler is a vigilante hero here. This
Yeah.
is our Spider-Man
Yeah.
without being bitten. And we get there's a few more clues to get us to that,
Yeah.
right? So we're hearing I love this too, because in a world without Spider-Man, Jonah Jameson on the radio is begging for a vigilante hero to save the day, which is if you know Jonah Jameson is not his bag. And so we get the radio talking about the Sinister Six cartels, right? So we're setting up worlds in Earth 42 that we have six cartels who are probably warring,
Hmm.
and maybe we have Prowler here to oppose them and
Hmm.
to bring safety to his world.
Yeah.
We get a couple of clues. Daniel, do you want to talk about the clues that we get about who we
Yeah.
think are these Sinister Six cartels might
In
be?
the background when Miles is running through the city, and again when we see the rooftops, we see like a sign for Vulture, we see a sign for Scorpion, both characters who now have had at least one instance in these movies. Doc Ock, there's like an 8 on like one of the billboards. We've seen Doc Ock, of course, in the first film as well. And then it's like, who do we have to fill out our other Sinister Six? These movies have shown us like Green Goblin already, which I think usually a good option there. But I think the movie hits really hard during that, like, here are our baddies in cages. Like the boring Rhino, the interesting Craven, a few different Mysterios. Like I think there's a good chance that our Sinister Six is one of those like gambles I'll throw down. Is like Scorpion, Vulture, Doc Ock, Rhino, Craven, and Mysterio. Feels great. Feels like a
Yeah.
fun group of people to have like different warring folks. And then to me, the story is like for Miles to go home or return home, he needs to find a way to help them run whatever it is, because that's just it. Like they maybe can't do enough between the two of them, but if they have Miles too, like that's a team that can do something.
and
Um,
then and then it becomes about too is like what does Miles 42 and Aaron 42 have to offer
yes,
our Miles? What will our Miles learn from them?
yeah, yeah,
This is just like I'm gonna rapid fire some questions that I have going into the next one, right? Some questions that I have is that I'm expecting to see some Peter B. Parker and Gwen reconciliations with Miles, right? Like they need to make up for like kind of some massive betrayals that happen in this movie. And with Miles, anything is possible. I've seen it. That quote from Gwen that I will refuse to get out of my head seems to set up some Gwen Miles romance. I'm excited to see what happens there. I'm looking for the detailed backstory for Jess Drew. I want to know who she got too close with. I also think she's our next bandmate in
mm-hmm.
the Gwen team up, because we see her through her device listening to Gwen. And if we go back to our themes, there's just so much evidence that Jess is cracking a little bit here
Yeah,
too. And then let's see. Oh, I think maybe I hit it. Oh,
yeah,
and then my last little silly bit is I'm wondering, now that we have Miles as like a confirmed fugitive of Spider Society, I want to know if the next movie is going to be approved by the Comics Code. So
classic.
we've had two Comics Code. We've a setup and a reminder, and I'm looking for a little bit of payoff about the approved by Comics Code in the next movie.
Especially if we get into some of these darker territories, things that would have not been approved in that other space, is which honestly I think the first few probably would not have been either. But maybe, there's, because it's a little, it's interesting. I can see on the breaking it there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about the things I've loved about this movie. We've talked about the things I see coming in the next one that I'm like, I know we're going to see Miguel 2099 be a Prowler from his world or another, and I'm guessing what's going to happen with the Earth 42 folks. And my other piece is like, if I saw any other clues that are not resolved, or like they've got to find their way to Miles, and it's either through Spider Bite, who's on the team, who was there for the machine sent him, or Gwen has seen Miles as Spider. It is in that apartment. It was in that case, and so there's a chance they can get that DNA sample, and so I'm looking for that to hopefully get them to the right place. So those are my last little pieces.
I think both, right? You need both. You
Yeah,
need Spider Bite, and you need the
yeah,
Alchemix Earth 42 spider, which we've seen in that apartment where Spot builds the mini collider. So those really feel like some places that Gwen needs to bring her band to for the
yeah,
next film.
absolutely. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you all for sticking for 3 hours of us
Woo!
talking about this movie.
It's
Uh,
longer than the movie.
Longer than the movie. We loved it. We hope y'all enjoy this, and we're gonna, chop this up and share it on smaller, more digestible bites. But y'all are great to stick around with us and
Yeah,
let us just
thank you
kind of
so much.
talk and talk and talk and talk. And please, as you have more thoughts and things, shoot them our way. Where there's no way we're done talking about this. We'll be watching this movie more times. We'll go watch the first one when the next one comes out. You probably can't stop us. We'll be talking about it then. Yeah, would
And
love to hear
in
everything you have to
the
say.
and in the words and on Gwen's poster, protect trans kids.
For trans kids. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, y'all have a great rest of your night. Bye.
Bye.